Welcome back to the PFF NFL show. Trevor, Sikkema, Dalton, Wasserman here with you guys once again. And week one's old news. Week one's tired news. We're not talking about any of that anymore. It's time for week two, baby. It's only Wednesday. It's only halfway through the week, but it's time to preview all of the upcoming games in the NFL. The Thursday game, the Sunday game, and the doubleheader that we got coming for you on Monday night. Dalton, how we doing, my friend? Season's in full swing. I heard you before we popped on. You were talking about how you've done 4 shows in 4 days when you combine that and the college show. How are we feeling? You know, we talk about time to throw a lot on this show. What's the time to sleep here during the season for Dalton in this 4-day stretch?
Last night was a little better. I got up around 8 today or so. I could have slept in a little later, but I did a radio interview. But I think the toughest ones are the Saturday night and Sunday night going into the review shows. It was probably about 3 hours on Saturday night and maybe 4 or 5 on Sunday night, something like that. I was up early Monday doing the review for the grade release show. I was probably up at like 6 or so on Monday, something like that. I'm not usually a morning person. Watching tape is the only reason I would get up that early.
That's your coffee, because you're not a coffee guy.
Darn
you're just
right.
straight to the tape. No decaf tape either. You need the full caffeinated tape. That's what I'm gonna start calling all 22 caffeine tape for you instead of decaf. The broadcast tape is decaf and the all 22 is full caffeinated.
Absolutely. You need the full thing. And honestly, the decaf, too, is the preseason, right? Preseason tape, it is what it is. It's fine. You know, it's there. It's tape, but it's not the real thing, right? It's not what gets you going, obviously. So, no, this was fun. And then even preparing for these games in week 2. And, you know, we spent all offseason speculating at what week 1 could and should look like. Well, now we've got 60 minutes of every team of actual proof of what they do look like and how they need to get better moving forward. So I think it's only going to get more fun as we go here.
Appreciate everybody tuning in right off the bat, getting the show kicked off. Terron Armstead is back with us this week to preview the Ronnie Stanley-Myles Garrett matchup, which is phenomenal. The little conversation that I got to have with him, I asked him because Terron went up against Myles Garrett multiple times in his career, and I basically just asked him, what do you do? How do you game plan? What are the adjustments? And he broke it all down for me. It was phenomenal. You guys aren't going to want to miss that when we get to the Browns preview. But we're doing all the games like we always do here on this show. If you guys want to see the PFF stats and all the data, all the numbers, everything as we go through it, get yourself a PFF Plus subscription. Best way to do that, subscribe.pff.com. And if you use the promo code for this show specifically, PFF NFL Show 25, you can get 25% off that annual PFF Plus subscription. So, obviously, a great time to do that. It's a great deal that you guys get. Get yourself 25% off. You're not just going to use it during the season. I know you use it in the offseason as well when we go through the team building, the free agency guide, the draft guide, all that great stuff. So, if you don't have one, now's a great time to get one. Let's jump into this. You went 11-5 last week on your game picks. I also went an equal 11-5, which, you know, neck and neck, a lot on the line. We got pride on the line here for this one of who's going to take the lead here. Of course, we'll talk about the game lines. We'll talk about some of our favorite bets throughout all of these games as well. But we start, as we always do, with Thursday Night Football. Commanders-Packers. Hell of a Thursday night game. It wasn't that long ago that Thursday night football games were reserved for like the dog matchup of the week. Like it was whatever game that nobody was really looking forward to. It felt like they always stuck those on Thursday night football. Now it's primetime games, man. I mean, Packers Commanders, that could be a preview of the NFC Championship game. I'm not saying it's the most likely. Eagles fans, calm down. I'm not saying that, but it could be with how these teams are playing, with how they played last year. So let's preview this game just by having a overarching conversation on these two teams, what side of the ball you're really looking forward to seeing. So I'll let you kick things off here. Packers Commanders. What draws your eye first?
Yeah, I know Micah Parsons was in the spotlight for the Packers, obviously, in his first game last week, but let's take a look at the way Jordan Love played last week. And obviously, there were 2 turnover-worthy plays pretty close to the line of scrimmage that weren't great, but he got away with it with the end result of it. The interception from Brian Branch was called back due to a penalty. Alex Anzalone had a shot at an interception, but other than those 2 throws, Jordan Love was spectacular, and I thought he was really good downfield. The one thing I've been looking for with Matthew Golden being added to this offense and Jordan Love kind of needing a little bit of a bounce back from last year is, can Can he get back to throwing in the intermediate parts of the field in front of safeties, right? That 10 to 19 yard range. Because look, he's got the arm and he's got the gunslinger mentality to throw it deep down the field. And this week he had the 5th best deep passing grade in the NFL. But I want to look at what he did underneath to set that up, because I think the way the Packers need to treat opposing defenses and the safeties especially, kind of like a pendulum, right? You don't need to force it. Just let them come back and forth and up near the line of scrimmage and then throw it over their heads, or if they sit back, then throw it in front of them. I thought they did a great job of it. Jordan Love this past week, 84.7 intermediate passing grade, also 5th best in the NFL, 6 of 9, 93 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 big-time throws, and whether it was 1 high, 2 high, he's really just reading the depth of the safeties in this offense with deep out routes, with deep crossing routes, and then underneath, when you talk about finding ways to just exploit those holes between the linebackers and the safeties when they go too high. I love the seam that he threw for the touchdown to Tucker Kraft early in the game as well. I just think the way that Jordan Love attacked against the Detroit Lions last week, and that's a great pair of safeties, and you got another pair of safeties that are really good here that played well last week with Will Harris and Quan Martin. I think controlling those 2 guys is going to be the key to Jordan Love's success this week and every week. How does he respond to safeties? How does he just read out the Packers' concepts the way they should be read out? Last year, it was a struggle for him in the intermediate range. Last week, he was really darn good there against Detroit, and it set up the rest of their passing game for success.
It feels like that's sort of been the Jordan Love conversation, right? I mean, like he's got all the arm talent in the world, and when it's going well, it's because he's this big game hunter type of a quarterback, and he's keeping those turnover-worthy plays a little bit lower. Obviously, when you get to the middle of the field, that's where more of the defenders are, whether it's the second level or the third level. The Commanders are going to be eyeing this. I have a lot of faith in who Dan Quinn is, not just as a head coach, but as a defensive mind, and sort of what they're going to do on that side of the ball. So they're going to – I think that this Commanders defense is going to be pretty good at baiting Jordan Love into these throws, and it's going to be a matter of, hey, who has the upper hand? Is it Jordan Love's arm strength? Is it his anticipation, or are the safeties playing a little bit of mental chess with him to get him to throw the football that they can go up and get it? So I'm looking forward to seeing how he continues to play against a really good defensive mind in Dan Quinn as the head coach there. On the other side of things for the Commanders, the game against the Giants last week, it just didn't feel like the Giants were putting a lot of stress on the Commanders in a lot of ways. They were very diverse in, who was running the ball for them, who was catching passes out of the backfield. We talked about that in the grade release show on Monday. I feel like the Packers are going to be a much better test when it comes to really putting the pressure on the Commanders all around to sort of play their best game. I look at the interior offensive line specifically, and we're going to talk offensive line a lot here on this show because some looked really great in week 1, some we have a lot of worries about. And the Commanders, I'm starting there because if you look on their interior, Brandon Coleman had a 22.9 passing grade last week, and Tyler Biadasz had a 43.8 pass blocking grade. That's one of their guards and one of their centers there. And of course, we all talked about Micah Parsons a ton and the addition that he individually was going to make for the Packers defense. But as a whole, it felt like that whole defensive line was just playing on fire because they had that type of player on their defense. Devontae Wyatt had a great game, above 17% passers win percentage. Lucas Van Ness was playing a lot stronger. He only had about a 10% passers win percentage this past week, but still, he looked like he was playing with his hair on fire. Rashawn Gary was playing well as well. So to me, it is that interior of the Commanders that I am looking at here because they were the biggest liability for this team last week against a really good defensive line with the Giants, and obviously the Giants weren't really a team that could capitalize. I feel as though the Packers certainly are one of those teams that can capitalize if your offensive line isn't playing the way that they need to. So for how well the supporting cast around Micah Parsons played last week, I'd be a little bit worried given how the Commanders played on the interior last week. They've got to have a much better game. And then I'll just throw in this as well. Terry McLaurin, missed a lot of time, a lot of talk with his contract and everything this past summer before the season got underway. Just a 61.2 receiving grade last week, 4 targets, 2 catches, and 27 receiving yards. It goes without saying, even with Deebo Samuel having a great game last week with 77 receiving yards, they have to have a lot more from Terry McLaurin, especially against a team like the Packers on a short week in Green Bay. So that's sort of what I think about the Commander side of things for this one.
Two great points there for their offense, and the two things I'm looking at. So last week they had those interior guys. They had to block Dexter Lawrence, who's obviously one of the hardest guys to block in the NFL. I'm looking here at pass rush situations, just like in Detroit last week. With Detroit last week, we didn't see a whole lot of it, but I think Jeff Hafley's going to get more into it. Micah Parsons lining up on obvious passing downs over those interior guys, standing up, doing all the creative things that you can do with him. I think that's going to be more of a factor in this defense. They're not just going to line up Micah Parsons on Laramie Tunsil and go, okay, hey, win one-on-one, because he can do that. But if you can find a huge advantage on the inside against a second-year guy like Coleman, against a center like Biadasz, then you've got yourself in business. And I think for Terry McLaurin, he's got to be a huge part of this game plan, because you and I both think the Packers cornerbacks are the biggest question for this team right now. If the pass rush can get home and they speed up Jaden, then that's one way to solve that. But I think one-on-one, if Jaden gets too much time in the backfield, McLaurin could win that battle on the outside. It could be a lot bigger day for him.
Yeah, one of the bets that we have on the player prop tool, if you guys download the PFF app, is Tucker Kraft getting just over 3 receptions in this game. And that's something that we see as a decently high cover probability there for him. He only had 2 receptions last week, but he got 4 targets. He looked like he was going to be in the mix for this offense. And so you guys can see that and so much more using the player prop tool, using the betting tab, if you guys have the PFF app. So that was just a little example that I wanted to give you guys, but you can see those things for every single game. Going to the Sunday slate here, the Chicago Bears and the Detroit Lions. This one is in Detroit, and all of a sudden, with how the Lions looked against the Packers, and then certainly how the Bears blew that game against the Minnesota Vikings, both of these teams licking their wounds here at 0-1, you know that nobody in this division wants to start 0-2. And the fact of the matter is, unless we get a tie, which I absolutely hate, that's going to happen for one of these teams. And so I think that, man, there's so much to dig into with both of these teams. Where does your eye go first when it comes to this matchup here?
Real quick, just keeping track of game picks. I have the Packers. You have the Packers or Commanders?
Oh, yes, sorry. Yes, I have the Packers as well. The score that I gave for the Packers was 27-23. What do you have?
I have 30-27 Packers. I think we're getting a high scoring game with these two quarterbacks. But anyway,
Yep.
you want the Bears offense? You want something on Bears Lions here? Here we go.
Sure, yeah. Let's go ahead. Go ahead. You can take the Bears. Go ahead.
A lot of spotlight here on Caleb Williams, obviously, and the inaccuracy. And he wasn't very accurate, especially in the second half of this game. And they blew the lead, and everything happened the way it happened in the fourth quarter for the Bears. But, Trev, you know what good teams do when they're up 17-6 late in games?
They win games?
They're able to, winnable games are only winnable if you win them. Remember that. See that?
There it is. There it is. The signature Dalton Wasserman quote that we have here on the PFF NFL show.
It was not as winnable as we thought it was. It was not quite as winnable as we thought. But good teams, when you get a lead late in games, they're able to run the football. And the Bears just were not able to on Monday against Minnesota. Now, Minnesota's got an excellent run defense. There's a lot of great players in that front that make that difficult. But this Bears offensive line has got to be better. DeAndre Swift has got to be better. And honestly, what is the depth of this running back crew when DJ Moore is the only other guy to get carries other than DeAndre Swift? He had 3 carries for 8 yards, and he was lining up in the backfield. So you wonder what kind of help the Bears need. But they had 20 design carries in this game for just 61 yards, only 1 explosive run, 54 run blocking grade, 35% impact run block percentage. That's the percentage of time that they're getting a positively graded run block. That was actually bottom 10 in the NFL this past week. So, look, the Bears got to have balance. You can't just ask Caleb Williams to drop back and do everything, especially when you have a lead. You had a 17-6 lead. This offensive line's got to play better. Jonah Jackson especially had a really rough game on the inside. They need to do a better job this week. DJ Reader, Tyleik Williams on the inside for the Lions are 2 guys I'm really watching for. The Bears have got to be able to line up and run the football when they need to. If they ask Caleb to do everything, it's just not the ideal situation in an offense this complex. He's only played 1 game in it, and we saw when he got a little bit rattled on Monday that the accuracy started to get away from him. So the Bears need more balance. No matter how much you want to criticize Caleb or anything like that, and it was very up and down. He got off to a great start. He wasn't good in the second half, but this Bears team and this Ben Johnson offense is not going anywhere if they only run design carries for 61 yards.
Yeah. No, and on the other side of things, like I am worried about what I saw last week from the Lions when it came to their run game as well. 46 rushing yards last week for the Detroit Lions, which is crazy to think for this Lions team from what we've seen over the last 2 to 3 years. That was tied for 31st in the NFL. It was tied for last. I believe it was them and the Cincinnati Bengals that had the lowest rushing total of any team. Dalton, they had -4 yards before contact in this game. A far cry from how we have talked about the Detroit Lions over the last couple of years. No Kevin Zeitler, no Frank Ragnow, no Ben Johnson. And this run game just was not what it needed to be. Again, the Packers are a damn good team. Edgerrin Cooper's fantastic at the second level. The defensive line, like I said, was playing their hair on fire with things in Green Bay. But it has to look so much better for Detroit. And when I look at this game, I'm actually going to take the Bears in this game. It kind of feels crazy given the fact that they had the total control against the Minnesota Vikings, but then they ended up blowing the game, and Caleb had a bunch of throws that were just, man, you got to make, not just if you're a franchise quarterback, but if you're a starting quarterback in this league. I understand all that. But at the end of the day, I've talked about this before. A lot of my picks before the season for teams I thought were going to win the division, that could make it to the Super Bowl, that could be, conference contenders, whatever it was, coaching. I'm big into coaching right now. I'm in my coaches matter era above everything else right now. And the fact of the matter is that not that I don't trust Dan Campbell. I think he's a fantastic head coach. But things were always going to take a little bit of time with their offensive and defensive coordinators no longer having Aaron Glenn and Ben Johnson. I have faith in Ben Johnson as the offensive play caller and head coach for the Chicago Bears, and I have a lot of faith in who Dennis Allen is as a defensive coordinator. So I'm barely taking the Bears in this one. This would be quite the upset because obviously it's going into Detroit, and that is a big deal. But I feel more confident about the Bears coaching staff having some of the more immediate answers than I do Detroit, because so much of, you look at the two new interior offensive linemen for the Detroit Lions. Tate Rowledge and Christian Mahogany really struggled as first-time full-time starters this year. They really struggled in last week's game. Now, I don't know if it's going to be that bad this upcoming week, but that's certainly going to matter. And if the Detroit Lions aren't running the ball the way that they need to, if Ben Johnson's not there scheming things up, having players in motion, running all sorts of rollouts or play action, because it's not just passing the football that allows you to open up those rushing lanes. Sometimes it is just that offensive design and that pre-snap stuff overall. Ben Johnson became an expert at that. I'm not so sure that the Lions have the immediate answers the way that Ben Johnson did, and how he was able to always stay one step ahead with the chess match over the last two seasons specifically. So I was skeptical about the Lions this year. I had them barely missing the playoffs when we were doing our season predictions. I still have those worries for them in this week going up against Chicago. Being at home, hopefully it helps them, but I'm worried with how that run game looked last week about whether or not there's going to be just those immediate fixes for them.
Yeah, and I think, look, the Packers, they were charged up last week. They just got Parsons in there. We had no idea what their defense was going to look like, and it looked really darn good. I think a big thing for me, and that's why this is a theme of both of ours here for this game, is who is going to run the football well in this game. And the problem is for the Bears coming into this year, because of their running back situation, because of such a new offense and everything being so new, I figure that running the ball might be a weakness. We still thought the Lions could have it as a strength, at least with Penei Sewell and with Taylor Decker still there at tackle. I'm going to trust them a little bit more. I think first down is very big for them. You don't want Jared Goff just dropping back and throwing the ball 40 times a game without play action. But I think if the Lions can get the run game right on first down, get Jahmyr Gibbs going a little bit more, and get into good down and distance situations, I think they can go and win this game. I'm going to take the Lions 24-21 here. It's going to be tight, and we're going to know early with what their offense looks like and compared to how it looked last week, because they got the garbage time touchdown, but it was ugly. It was, Trevor, and they just need to be better on the interior. I also think it's, they're fortunate this week that they're not facing Micah Parsons and Rashawn Gary and that unit playing the way they were playing last week. So I think it's going to be on Dennis Allen for the Bears to manufacture some pass rush, because it's just not a great unit they have there up front. They don't have a Micah Parsons or one of those guys in Chicago, but I think that's the key for me. The Lions being successful on first down, if they can do that, they can pull this game out.
I have the Bears 24-20. I think this is going to be close, and this feels like a coin flip type of a game for me, but I will have Chicago. I just got a little bit more faith in that full coaching staff there with Chicago. The next game we're talking about is the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Seattle Seahawks. This game is in Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh hosting this one after their win in New York, and the Seahawks obviously traveling across the country after their loss against the San Francisco 49ers. Where are we starting here, Dalton?
So we're going to look at the Steelers' defense, and despite them winning, I can guarantee you Mike Tomlin was very irritated with the fact that the Jets were clearly the more physical team on the field on both sides of the line of scrimmage than the Steelers were last week. Obviously, Aaron Rodgers bailed them out, and the Jets made a couple mistakes late in the game, but the Steelers were not good, especially against the run last week. And I want to talk about, as we do often with Seattle, outside zone running. They didn't do a great job last week running the ball against San Francisco, but the Steelers showed some weaknesses as well. 15 outside zone runs the Steelers saw against the Jets last week. 12 of those 15 went to the left, and I want that to be an important part here because that is away from TJ Watt. The Jets made a plan of, okay, we're going to run at the interior guys and make cutbacks. We're going to run at Alex Highsmith. We cannot run at TJ Watt because he's arguably the best run defending edge player in the league. But as a team on those 15 snaps, 53.7 run defense grade. The Jets had 5.5 yards per carry and 4 explosive runs. Breece Hall had a fantastic day running away from TJ Watt and getting those zone blocks going to the left. Now, the Seattle offensive line is not as established, and I know the Jets have young guys, but they really established themselves in that game as possibly a good unit, especially Armand Membu there at right tackle. But I think this is going to be the key, and what Mike Tomlin's going to want to see is better run defense from his team because Seattle's still going to try to run the ball with Clint Kubiak. The offensive line is trying to gel. They didn't get into it last week, and I really believe that's the reason they lost the football game last week against San Francisco. They didn't control time of possession. They didn't get, I think, maybe 1 or 0 explosive runs on the day, if I remember that right. It just didn't, the offense couldn't get layered the way that Clint Kubiak wants it to. If they can run the ball better against Pittsburgh this week, or if Pittsburgh, I should say, doesn't improve from their performance that they had in New York last week, then you got yourselves a real situation here with Seattle's offense, even though Pittsburgh's defense on paper is an elite unit, but the Jets ran it right down the throat last week, and especially away from TJ Watt.
I think a lot of people, now kind of like flipping to the Steelers side of things, a lot of people were honest about Aaron Rodgers' grade last week with him. You throw in 4 touchdowns, and yet his PFF grade, I think, was in the 50s or 60s. I can't remember.
About a 56, about a 56 or so.
56. There was, and a lot of people were sort of like getting on us for that. And the fact of the matter is, you can go back and watch all 4 of those touchdowns if you want. 2 of them were wide open. It was blown coverages. Another one was a throw to the flat on the goal line in which Jamie Sherwood, the Jets linebacker, had no chance to make a play on it. And then the other one was just a pop pass in the backfield that ended up going for a touchdown. And so, yeah, okay, the stat sheet tells you it's 4 touchdowns, but it's not like Aaron was really working for it. Now, of course, we'll give him his credit because he was able to see certainly when those wide receivers were wide open from the blown coverages, his eyes were able to go to it pretty quickly, and he was able to get his guys the ball, which sort of goes into what I want to talk about to preview this game. The Steelers' yards after catch last week from those blown coverages and also from some DK Metcalf magic there, 172 yards came after the catch for the Pittsburgh Steelers. That was 3rd most in the NFL last week. And I thought about it. I was like, man, I feel like the Seahawks played a little bit tighter in coverage, but they also had some coverage busts themselves. 126 yards after the catch for the San Francisco 49ers. That was 7th most in the NFL. So if the Seahawks aren't on their P's and Q's when it comes to coverage, it might be a similar day that we could see from the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, I don't think it's going to be quite that high scoring because I don't see the Seahawks defense having as many blown coverages as the Jets did last week, but it is something to note there for that Seattle Seahawks defense. On the other side of things, the Steelers have to run the football better. And 53 rushing yards, that's 29th most in the NFL last week. I mean, like they straight up have to have more rushing production because, like I said, I think it's going to regress towards the mean, if you will, with how the Seahawks play. I don't think the Steelers are going to get as many yards after catch as they got this past week. I don't think they will see as many blown coverages as they did against the Jets this upcoming week. So in order to balance that out, they have to run the ball better. But getting to the offensive line, I'm worried about Broderick Jones at this point. Like, we've talked about Broderick Jones over the last 2 years. In week 1, 44.9 pass blocking grade from Broderick Jones. He had 3 sacks allowed and 4 pressures allowed. Like, it's just not good enough. It has to be so much better for a guy that you're hoping is your franchise offensive tackle. And so we thought that was going to be an issue for the Steelers going into this season. And I think it's going to be an issue in this game. If Broderick Jones cannot play better, Seattle's got the guys to be able to get after the quarterback and to be able to get the ball out of Aaron Rodgers' hands very quickly. So I am taking the Seahawks in this game. I'm taking the Seahawks 24-17. And the reason why is because I got worried about just the Steelers' offensive line in general going up against this Seahawks defensive line. And if I think those guys are really pressuring and getting in the face of Rodgers, Rodgers at this point, he does not want to take hits. He's going to get the ball out of his hands quickly. He's smart enough as a quarterback to be able to do that. But I think that Mike McDonald knows that he can play his corners more aggressive. I mean, he's got Devon Witherspoon, Reek Woolen, Josh Jobe. All three of those corners have the strength and the length to be able to play that press type of coverage that is much closer to the line of scrimmage. So if you're getting the ball out very quick against a team that's not afraid to play press against you, that's a tough day at the office. It's a lot of contested catches. It's a lot of tight window throws. And if Rodgers is able to do it, hats off to him. But I feel as though if that's the storyline and that's how it's going to manifest, give me the Seahawks in a slight win here, 24-17. That's what I've got for the score of this game.
Yeah, it's funny because they scored 34 points last week, and yet I think your concerns about the Steelers' offense are justified. I actually think this is both ways going to be a low-scoring game. But I still think, though, the best unit on this field, and they need to bounce back. They need to play more physical. I think the Steelers' defense at home here with Seattle making the long trip, I think that's still going to be the best unit. I think they're going to bounce back. Mike Tomlin knows they have to be more physical on the defensive line. I've got Pittsburgh 21-13 over the Seahawks, and I just think if you have an offense in Seattle that's also still trying to gel, still trying to find its way, and the problem of Jackson Smith and Jigba really being the only guy that did anything as a receiver last week for Seattle is this is the moment for the Steelers is they're going to put Jalen Ramsey in the slot a lot this week against Smith and Jigba. Then where else do we go? Is it Cooper Kupp? Is it Torrey Horton? Is it Elijah Royal? Where else can Sam Darnold throw the ball? Because if I'm Pittsburgh, I'm putting Ramsey over Smith and Jigba in the slot. I'm leaning everything his way. Kind of similar sometimes how teams do against CeeDee Lamb in Dallas. Just make somebody else beat you, right? And if they can't find a way to do that against a solid group of corners and what should be a very, very good defense, then I'm not sure how Seattle's going to put up a ton of points. I think we get a low-scoring defensive game, 21-13 Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I think that we're I'm remembering some of the picks that I have, and there are a handful of upset picks that I have this week, and I just feel as though, man, it's like we watch week one, and there are certainly things to take away from week one, because if you showed strengths and weaknesses, like obviously those are major points that you want to take into week two, but things can change a lot in week two. And I think that we might be able to get closer to what real teams' identities are over the next 2 weeks specifically. And that's why I think that this week could be ripe for a good amount of upsets, because the books might be going off of what happened last week in a lot of spots and maybe giving teams a little bit too many points. The over-under for this one was 40.5. And so they agree with you that it's a low-scoring type of affair. I have the score total at 41, so I have it barely as an over. You have it as the under at 21-13, and so it'll be interesting to see how these teams match up, because there's no doubt about it, the Steelers, in theory, are the more complete defensive line against the Seahawks offensive line, but I will still go with the Seattle Seahawks here. Jaguars and Bengals. All right, this is 1-0 versus 1-0. Starting 2-0. Sounds pretty nice, especially if you're a Bengals fan and they haven't started off 1-0 in a while. So how do the Bengals do it? What are you focusing on here with the Cincinnati Bengals and previewing this game?
So I think it's funny for the Bengals, because we mentioned this on the grade release show, that this game in Cleveland they just played, I would throw out all the numbers from it. I just think anytime they go to Cleveland, the statistics are going to be what they are. If they get out alive with a win, then fine, so be it. The 1-0 feels good as any other scenario, right? I think what intrigues me on this side of the ball of the Bengals offense versus the Jags defense is just the way that Anthony Campanile is using his personnel on defense, right? And we saw this against Carolina this past week. So we talk about all the time, nickel's the new base. Everybody's got 5 defensive backs on the field all the time, and you can see the structure of the Jags defense is a little bit weird. They're actually going with 6 defensive backs technically on the field a lot. 40% of their defensive plays last week, they were in dime with 1 linebacker, just Foye Oluokun, and 6 defensive backs. And what it's creating is, in obvious passing situations, he's just getting their best athletes out there, right? Devin Lloyd only played 22 snaps last week. He's really using everybody at linebacker other than Oluokun in more neutral situations. If we get an obvious passing downs, and with the Bengals, it's probably going to be a lot of them with Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, he's going to put his best athletes on the field. I think the interesting guy in this defense right now is Andrew Wingard, number 42, the strong safety, kind of linebacker-ish hybrid. He's this flexible player that they use all over the place in this defense, and even in those dime sets operates as their second linebacker. Anthony Campanile's putting speed on the field that he wants to prevent explosive explosive passes. It was the biggest problem for the Jaguars last year. He's doing it with more defensive backs. Again, 40% of the time he had 6 defensive backs on the field last week. And one of the big problems last year in Jacksonville was way too much man coverage when they did not have the personnel to do it. This year, at least in 1 week so far, 5th highest zone coverage rate in the league. They're sitting back. They're preventing explosives. That's the goal of this defense in obvious passing situations. So when the Bengals get in those longer situations where Joe Burrow's going to sit back there and throw the football, the Jags are going to have a lot of defensive backs on the field. You're going to see a lot of zone coverage, and they're trying to improve their team's speed when it comes to obvious passing situations on defense.
Yeah, I'm excited to see how effective the Jags are at that emphasis of limiting those explosive plays in the pass game, because I'm going to be honest with you, Dalton, I think this game could be a shootout. I really do. Obviously, the Bengals, the firepower that they have on offense, it goes without saying. And they did not have a great week last week, but you said when they play Cleveland, especially in Cleveland, you just kind of throw everything out. That's not really the true identity of the Bengals. They just really struggle beating that team and staying true to their identity, being very explosive against that team and in that stadium. So I think it will naturally be a bounce-back game for the Bengals, especially with this being their home opener. But on the other side of things as well, I think we could have fireworks from the Jags offense. I think the Jags, okay, it's game 1 of Liam Cohen being the offensive coordinator. They win the game. They look pretty good. Trevor Lawrence says afterwards how confident he felt in everything that he was seeing, because he felt like the game plan was so on point. I feel like as the game was going on, he was able to recognize things that the Carolina defense was doing. He just felt very prepared. And obviously, Liam Cohen is somebody who saw the Carolina Panthers twice last year as the Bucs offensive coordinator, so he sort of knew them well. He knew their defensive structure, what they were trying to do. So I think it was a good first game for them. But even with that win against Carolina, Brian Thomas Jr., 7 targets, 1 catch, 11 yards, had a drop, just a 50.3 receiving grade. Travis Hunter, 8 targets, 6 catches, but only 33 yards. He had a drop himself and 55.3 receiving grade. I think that these two could be in for a massive game now, especially if it starts to become that sort of shootout with Cincinnati and they're really starting to dial up more of those explosive plays. You know that those two are going to have a better game. And then I'm specifically looking at what happened to the Bengals defense last week. They were able to defend the run really well against the Cleveland Browns, but what they weren't able to do well was defend Dylan Sampson as a receiver out of the backfield. 8 targets, 8 catches, 62 receiving yards, and then I think it was a 92.4 receiving grade is what Dylan Sampson had. Travis Etienne, we know that he is going to be the RB1 now on that team with Tank Bigsby now traded to the Philadelphia Eagles. They do have LeQuint now, and they do have Bashal Tutin, but Travis Etienne can kind of do it all. He's not just a rusher, he's also a really experienced receiver. So I think this could be a game where even he has a big output as a wide receiver, or just a receiver out of the backfield, I should say. So the Jags have the rest. They have all of the ingredients. They have the quarterback who wants to throw it deep. They've got the 2 wide receivers that they know they have the athletic ability, that are coming off lower than expected or standard production. They've got a running back out of the backfield who knows how to catch, and they've got an offensive coordinator who is willing to be aggressive and wants to score a lot of points in Liam Cohen. That going up against one of the highest potential offenses in the NFL with the Cincinnati Bengals, especially with them being at home, I think we're in for some fireworks here. I've got the Bengals winning this game 35-33, though. I think that this is a high-scoring game between these two teams.
So I think there's a potential for a high-scoring game, but I'm intrigued with the idea that Liam Cohen is going to try to slow this game down. He's going to try to play, again, a lot of zone coverage from Anthony Campanile to try to just keep things in front of you. I think that's the big theme right now for the Jags defense. Keep things in front of you, and if Josh Hines-Allen can win the game with the pass rush, then so be it. But if nothing else, don't get beat over the top like we did last year. You can tell that's the big emphasis. On the other side, I think the Bengals are going to have things figured out a little bit more. Right? Again, I'm throwing away the Cleveland stats. I don't think there's anything actually fundamentally wrong with their offense. And with the different looks and the different personnel that the Jags are going to throw at Joe Burrow, I just think with the zone coverage, he's maybe the best processor in the whole league. I think he's going to be able to see what's going on out here. I do think he's going to get nickel and dimed a little bit. I think the Jags are going to do everything they can to not let Higgins and Chase get over the top. I have it a little lower, with a little lower score than you do. I think this is going to be more of a ball control game than you think. Cincinnati 24, Jacksonville 21. I will acknowledge, though, there is the potential if the Jags don't get a pass rush and Joe Burrow's just having one of those A-plus days where he's seeing everything you're doing in coverage, I think they've got the higher ceiling. The Jaguars offense, to me, they have the ingredients, but you got to make the cake, and it's still a work in progress right now. Last week, the Panthers defense, we know the Bengals defense is a work in progress too, but they looked pretty good last week. I think Cincinnati gets it done 24-21, maybe a little lower scoring than you have it.
Nah, they're baking the cake, baby. Preheat the oven, 350. We're about to make a beautiful
They're in the preheat phase. You know that takes like 20 minutes, depending on your oven. It just takes, my oven takes forever. I can't stand cooking in the oven in my place. I need a new oven, actually I'm moving next week, so I'm getting a new oven. What am I saying?
It better be a new oven.
I'm the idiot that moves apartments during football season too. That's brilliant on my part.
Yeah, when's your last day that you are in your apartment?
I'm trying to move out next Thursday, so I'm getting through all our shows next week.
Okay.
And then I'm trying, but we'll see. There's some other complications in that too, of course, because that's, we're gonna have a fun time. Next week will be fun. If I look like I've had absolutely no sleep next week, you'll know why. Feels good.
Yeah, the Dalton time to sleep is going to be, if you thought it was rough before, it's going to be rough.
Average time to sleep. We're going to get a stat from the guys back there. They got a graphic for us. So average time to sleep, 8 seconds. Yeah,
it's going to be worth it because you're going to have a new oven. That's what I'm learning.
That's all we need. Honestly, I'm an air fryer guy anyway. Screw it. Whatever.
That's true. That is true. Air fryers.
Good invention. Love it. Whoever invented that, thank you.
Top 10 invention.
Yep.
Fire, the wheel, air fryer. It's got to be.
But we don't even need fire anymore. We have an air fryer. It's made fire obsolete. We're good. See that? Simple.
It's just an upgrade. Bills and Jets. The Jets are hosting this one. The Bills coming off a thrilling win. The Jets coming off a disappointing loss where it felt like they did everything right on the offensive side of the ball. AFC East showdown. What do we think here, Dalton? Which side of the ball you want to take?
All right, so let's look at Josh Allen a little bit. And obviously he was great last week because he's great darn near every week. That's just how this works. And the Jets, you mentioned they did a lot right on offense. They did a lot right on defense too, except in the secondary. We'll leave Sauce Gardner out of this. He had a great game last week. But the rest of those guys, it was coverage busts, it was missed assignments. And then what you have from this Jets team, philosophically, with Aaron Glenn and Steve Wilkes running this defense, being so different from Robert Saleh and Jeff Ulbrich in the old regime, a lot more man coverage, a whole lot more man coverage, the same way we saw from Aaron Glenn in Detroit when they were the highest rate man coverage team in the league last year. The Jets ran the fifth most man coverage, the fifth highest rate of man coverage, I should say, in the league last week against Pittsburgh. Aaron Rodgers took advantage. Josh Allen has an interesting split against the Ravens last week, who have a much deeper secondary than the Jets. He had a 93.4 passing grade last week against zone coverage, but only a 52 passing grade against man. And what you get from Josh Allen is, depending on the looks, and look, he's got a super high football IQ. It gets better every single year. He understands what he should be able to do against man and against zone coverage. Against zone, you're going to nickel and dime. You're going to move the chains. You're not going to take too many shots downfield unless somebody busts on the back end. Against man coverage, a lot of times, you talk about these mobile quarterbacks against man-to-man, and if you don't have a spy or maybe even two on a guy like Josh Allen, you really get burned with his legs. And Josh Allen last year was the highest graded quarterback in the NFL, a 90.4 overall grade against man coverage, in large part because he had a 91.7 rushing grade against it. In passing grade, he was like 10th or 11th. He was still solid. He had an 80 passing grade, but if you turn your backs and you don't have a super athletic spy, and even then Josh Allen might break the tackle anyway, if he gets in trouble and he sees all this man-to-man coverage, I think it could be a big day for Josh Allen running the football in scramble situations. Aaron Glenn is going to need to have a plan for this, and Joe Brady's very good at designing route concepts to beat man coverage anyway. We saw that last year when the Bills went into Detroit and scored, 45 points, I think it was. But you have to be able to contain Josh Allen on the ground if you're going to run this much man coverage. Is it Quincy Williams as the spy? Is it somebody else? Who in the world can contain Josh Allen out on the move when you're playing man coverage? That's a big question for Aaron Glenn on defense this week.
It's essentially an impossible ask. But for the New York Jets, it's interesting. I think that they probably opened up the season and they're like, well, it's going to be a tough day at the office when it comes to what we want to do, rushing the football against the Pittsburgh Steelers to open things up. But against the Bills, like the Bills have struggled in run defense, and they really struggled in run defense again last week against the Ravens. Now I understand it's Lamar and Derrick Henry, like it's the cream of the crop. It's the very top options that you're going to face in this league, but still. They had a 48.4 run defense grade against the Baltimore Ravens last week. You highlighted some of the struggles from the linebacker. Bernard had a 38.8 run defense grade. Milano 29.8. Dorian Williams a 60.9. I mean, like their linebacker level just was not good when it came to defending the run, and we know that's what the Jets want to do. Last week, the Jets 182 total rushing yards. That was fourth most in the NFL. 39 rushing attempts. That was second most in the NFL. Yards before contact average, 1.5. That was top 10. That was 10th in the NFL. And so this is one of these games where I think a lot of people might look at it on paper. They might say, well, the Jets are going to lose a lot of football games this year, and the Buffalo Bills could potentially win the Super Bowl. So this should be a very obvious, not even close, the Buffalo Bills are going to win this game. I have the Bills winning. I have them winning 30-27. Like I don't think the Jets are going to score as much as they did last week, but like 27, 24 points, something like that. Like I could absolutely see it for the way that the Jets offensive line played last week against a really good Steelers defensive line, like you mentioned, how savvy they were in running away from their biggest threat of TJ Watt and the output they were able to have there. I think that they will be able to exploit the Buffalo Bills front and their linebacker level, like we have seen over the last couple of years when we've been worried about this Buffalo Bills run defense. So do I think it's going to be enough? No. But I do actually think that as long as the Jets don't turn the ball over, if they play a clean game, this could absolutely be a one-possession game when the clock strikes zero at the end of the fourth quarter.
Yeah, and credit to the coaching staff. You can tell Aaron Glenn is not messing around when it comes to trying to win ball games. He was trying to win that ball game against Pittsburgh last week, and it's funny you mentioned turnovers. The one turnover they did have was the Xavier Gibson fumble on the kick return. Xavier Gibson got cut this morning, and Aaron Glenn basically said that was pretty much going to happen in his post-game presser on Sunday. He got cut. They're going to have a new kick returner back there. He is not messing around. If you're not executing and you do things, he mentioned it, if you do things that cost us games, you're not going to be on the field. You're not going to be on this team. So he's not messing around when it comes to the culture shock of this. And if the Jets run the ball as well as they did last week, then they are a threat to beat anybody, especially this Bills defense. I love the way that Tanner Engstrand had a really good plan, again, running away from TJ Watt. Watt generally lines up on that right side of the offense. This week, my focus guy is Greg Rousseau. He lines up a little more evenly on both sides, but I'm finding ways to run away from Greg Rousseau and attack some of those other guys, Joey Bosa and some of the other younger guys that the Bills have on the inside. That being said, Josh Allen's still the best player on the field. I still think he's going to find a way to get this done. I'm with you. I think this very well could be high scoring. I got the Bills 34, Jets 27. We will see if it gets wider than that based on if Justin Fields can bring last week's passing production into this week. But the Bills defense is still concerning to me, and they're going to keep a lot of teams in games that they shouldn't.
In the NFC East, the New York Giants are traveling to Dallas to take on the Dallas Cowboys, who made that opening matchup against Philadelphia Eagles a lot closer than I think a lot of us thought that it was going to be. So I ask you, where are we starting with this one? Are you focusing on the Cowboys? Or are you focusing on the Giants bouncing back from only scoring 6 points last week?
I'll take the Cowboys side of this because, look, Dak Prescott's a giant killer. He plays well against the Giants every single time he plays against them. But the obstacle, as always, when you're playing the Giants this year, we're going to talk about it just about every week, is going to be Burns and Thibodeau and Carter and Lawrence and this pass rush that they're bringing at you. They were pretty darn good, like you mentioned before, in the Washington game, especially Lawrence on the inside. Last week, the Cowboys had the third worst pass blocking grade in the league last week. They allowed pressure to Prescott. Prescott was pressured 37% of the time. That's a little bit high. And all five of their offensive linemen allowed multiple pressures. The two offensive tackles, Tyler Guyton and Terrence Steele, have to be better. The inside was okay. They held up well. They got lucky because Jalen Carter got ejected and all of that. But the two tackles have got to be better. The one thing I'll give Prescott is he's a veteran. He knows how to protect himself. Last year against the Giants, they didn't really pass protect too well, but his average time to throw was only 2.4 seconds, his second lowest of the season. And the one game that was lower was against Myles Garrett and the Cleveland Browns. So Dak Prescott understands the situation where you go, okay, again, if they can't protect me, then I'll protect myself. Get the ball out quick to CeeDee Lamb. Get the ball out quick to George Pickens. If they can run the football at all, that would help. They got a little bit going early in the game last week against Philly, but I really think this game is about Dak Dak Prescott beating the Giants' defensive line to the punch, getting the football out of his hands quickly and allowing Pickens and Lamb and all these other guys to make plays after the catch.
So on the Giants side of things, we've talked about this offseason about how their entire offensive plan has been to be more explosive than they were last year. They've got receivers to be able to do it. They've got the quarterbacks, right? No matter who they have at quarterback out there, whether it's Jackson Dart, Jameis Winston, or Russell Wilson, who was starting once again in this game, they're deep ball throwing quarterbacks. They have explosive receivers out of the backfield as well, specifically with Tyrone Tracy. And yet, they don't have the offensive line, or they certainly didn't have the offensive line last week against the Commanders to hold up to be able to do that. I am once again worried about that this week for them because the Cowboys specifically focused on that with the Philadelphia Eagles. They played a lot of deeper coverage. They said we are not going to let A.J. Brown beat us. We're not going to have all these explosive plays everywhere. We're not going to even let them attempt it. They ran 22 out of their, I think it was 65 defensive snaps with 2 high looks pre-snap. So they're keeping cap coverage on a lot of stuff. And Jalen Hurts last week, 4.5 average depth of target, 3.67 time to throw because everything was deep, and he ended up sort of just like checking it down, like, okay, like I'm gonna hold on to the football. There's nothing there immediately. I'm gonna run around a little bit. Now I'm gonna check it down. And he made a lot of smart decisions. This isn't like an anti-Jalen Hurts kind of a rant. I'm not saying that that's what it is. But what the Cowboys did last week, limiting the even attempts that the Philadelphia Eagles had throwing the ball deep down the field, that is a major negative for what the New York Giants want to do. They want you to be aggressive in their coverage. They want you to play single high. They want to be able to give their guys a chance deep down the field. And if it comes down to Russell Wilson just checking the ball down again, well, he was not as consistent and accurate as he needed to be. I would say within 10 yards last week to be able to win the game, and he's got to be a lot better there. But I just don't know if teams are really going to give the Giants the time to throw that they want to set their offense up the way that they want it to be set up. And I think certainly the offensive line, which we'll talk a lot about for the Giants, which was not good enough last week, and now they're taking on a Cowboys team that I thought the defensive line looked better than I thought it was going to against the Philadelphia Eagles, certainly with one of the best offensive lines in the NFL. I think things get a little bit easier getting after the quarterback this week, and so it's hard for me to think that the Giants are going to win if I cannot expect them to execute the game plan that they want. Now, I thought the Cowboys' offensive line, I think that's sort of going through their own struggles. They're going up, of course, the names that you mentioned, one of the best defensive lines in the NFL. I have the Cowboys winning this game, but I have them winning barely. 17-14 is what I have Dallas winning this game as. I think it's going to be a little bit more low scoring. Perhaps Dak comes out on fire in back-to-back weeks and he's able to connect the way that he could have against the Eagles. He had some drops, and if you think, okay, well, those drops aren't going to happen with a guy like CeeDee Lamb again, then maybe you could see this game getting into the 20s with them. But I still think it's going to be a little bit of a work in progress for them, and I'm going to say 17-14, the Cowboys win this one.
First of all, I want to say about Matt Eberflus, you make a fantastic point about his defense, and it's zone heavy, and the big theme is rotating the safeties and making quarterbacks find things post-snap. The Eagles dropped back to throw 34 times last week. All 34 were zone coverage that Jalen Hurts saw. Not a single snap of man coverage on a pass play last week from Dallas. And I think when you talk about putting that cap, having those 2 high shells on this team and Russell Wilson, and even if we see Jackson Dart at some point in this game, which wouldn't shock me in the least bit, the way the vibes are in New York right now, I think that's what you're trying to prevent. Just don't let Malik Neighbors get over the top. Make him run the football. Make him throw it underneath to Wan'Dale Robinson and Darius Slayton and guys who don't scare you as much as Neighbors. The tight end, Theo Johnson, really struggled last week, I thought. So I think the Cowboys defense is really built to prevent that, the way Matt Eberflus runs it. I like the Cowboys a lot in this game. I don't like the vibes with the Giants right now. I don't like the offensive line. I think if they're going to win this game, they really need, a big game out of probably Tyrone Tracy running the football, and I don't know if they can block for him anyway. I like Tyrone Tracy, but if their offensive line is going to play at a bottom 5 level, I don't know how they win this game. I don't know how they're going to score. Even though Dallas's run defense is not great, they showed better against Philadelphia than I thought they would, and that's an elite offensive line. Prescott's a Giants killer. I think since 2019, he's got a 90 passing grade against them. I like the Cowboys a lot. I think they're going to get a big win, 27-13.
All right. I mean, if Prescott plays the way that he did last week, I could see it. And certainly, if Prescott plays the way that he played last week, and then if the Giants' offensive line plays the same as the way,
you know what? I think this is the game.
I can see this opening up.
This is the game where last week the Eagles are zone heavy, and the idea was, okay, George Pickens is going to take the top off and kind of not be the big factor today, and CeeDee Lamb will be the big guy underneath. I think it could be more balanced if Shane Bowen mixes up the looks. You could see more of George Pickens this week as well as far as targets. And he missed, he didn't get to catch a deep ball last week because of a pass interference, but I think Pickens is a bigger factor this week.
All right, this PFF betting segment is brought to you by our friends over at DraftKings. You mentioned that you like the Cowboys a lot in this one. If you look at DraftKings on the app or DraftKings.com, the line that we have as we are recording the show is 5.5. The Cowboys are favored by 5.5 in this one. Of course, the lines and the odds are subject to change as we're recording this on a Wednesday, and we got some time between now and Sunday. But you like them. You like them comfortably covering here at minus 5.5, huh?
I'm in on it. I think that the Giants' defensive line, and this is, they needed to build more advantages than just this, but the one Giants advantage is just their defensive line. If Prescott's going to get rid of the ball quickly and accurately like he did last week, then I think the Giants could be in for a world of hurt. The secondary needs to play better if they're going to succeed. That if the Giants are going to win this game, they're going to win a low-scoring game more like you had at 17-14, but I think there's a chance that Prescott could play really well and the Cowboys could kind of run away with this thing because the Giants' offense, look, again, the vibe of it with the Russell Wilson, we got out of a week 1 game with Brian Daboll saying all summer that Russell Wilson's my quarterback, and we got out of week 1 with major questions about we may see 2 quarterbacks in this game. We may see Russell Wilson and Jackson Dart, and honestly...
Didn't they say they had, designed packages for Jackson Dart, right?
Yeah, the whole playbook. I mean...
I was just going to say 4 verts concepts. Any variation of 4 verts is the package plays for Jackson.
Yes, and then even then, this is why I like Dallas's defense against Eberflus. That's the one thing he's protecting against. He's going to make you check it down in these zone defense. He's going to, whether it's Wilson or Dart or whoever, may not be comfortable with that. But I don't like the vibe of this Giants team. And to be honest with you, I don't care who their quarterback is if their offensive line is going to play the way they played last week. I don't think it really matters. I do like Dallas at home a lot in this game.
So one of the lines that I like is the Patriots getting 1.5 against the Miami Dolphins.
Yeah,
and we're gonna talk more in depthly about that game. But all I'll say is that the vibes feel horrendous in Miami right now. And I've got another team with a good head coach. I know they're figuring it out. The roster's turning over, all that kinds of stuff. But they got a good head coach in Mike Vrabel. And I think he knows the Miami Dolphins very well. I actually like the Patriots getting 1.5 there to upset the Miami Dolphins. But look, if you take our 2 bets right there, you come up with one more that you guys like, you're 2/3 of the way to a 3-leg parlay. Don't let one bad leg haunt your parlays. Parlays turn into payouts, and now even near misses won't haunt your bets. The NFL season's here, and DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL, is rewriting the rules with Ghost Leg. It's a new game-changing promotion that turns close calls into cold hard cash. Best of all, it is available to all DraftKings customers, and here's how it works. You build any 3-leg pregame NFL parlay on Sundays, apply it to your Ghost Leg token. If one of the legs loses, DraftKings makes it vanish, boom, like it never even happened, and then they pay you out in cash for the rest. Last season, over 30 million parlays were lost by a single leg. This year, Ghost Leg gives those busted bets a second life. We gave you our 2 that we kind of like this week, and like I said, if you got one more, there you go. You got a PFF NFL show parlay right there. No more busted parlays that haunt you all season. With Ghost Leg, the bad leg vanishes, the payout does not. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app, use the promo code PFF. That's promo code PFF to unlock Ghost Leg, the promotion that makes one bad leg disappear and pays you out in real cash. Ghost Leg, or Ghost your losses, get your payouts in partnership with DraftKings Sportsbook. The crown is yours. If you got a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problems with gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly on behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas. Fees may apply in Illinois. 21 plus age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Opt in for single-use token. Minimum 3+ legs and minus 500 odds per leg. Max bet varies. If only one of the legs of the bet loses, the bet will settle as if only the winning legs were placed and pays out in cash based on the odds when the bet was placed. See terms at sportsbook.draftkings.com/promos. Let's do Rams Titans next. Titans Coming off a tough performance, I would say just overall, Cam looked good. Cam looked good down the stretch. Looks like they got somebody there at quarterback, which I'm excited about. The Rams, on the other hand, man, it felt like it was just a vintage close game from them. Low scoring. We don't always see that from the Los Angeles Rams, but man, just getting it done at the end. Really impressive how they were able to come away with that win against a really good Houston Texans team and a Houston Texans defense. What do you want to talk about here? You want to talk about the Titans or you want to talk about the Rams?
Let's go with the Titans. Let's go. Look, if you're going to have a rookie quarterback, and we thought the Titans coming into this year would have a pretty solid offensive line, right? They've spent a lot of resources. There's 2 first-round picks up there. There's a lot of money they've spent on Dan Moore and Lloyd Cushenberry and Kevin Zeitler, and they didn't pass protect at all against Denver last week. And when you have a rookie quarterback, especially one that likes to hold the ball as long as Cam Ward does, you got to pass protect. Look, they had the second worst pass blocking grade in the league last week. Cam Ward was under pressure 53% of the time. You'll never win a game in the NFL, or really anywhere, if your quarterback's under pressure 53% of the time. Then you look at the matchup on the other side. We talked about it with another AFC South foe in Houston last week, but this Rams pass rush is a major problem. Jared Verse, Kobe Turner, Braden Fisk, Poona Ford, Byron Young, Josiah Stewart, whatever else they're throwing at you. The Rams are monsters up front. They had the second best pass rush grade, I should say, in the NFL last week. They pressured C.J. Stroud 41% of the time, and Stroud generally gets the ball out quicker than Cam Ward is right now. So, I mean, straight up, if you're going to spend this many resources, if Dan Moore is going to make $20 million a year, Lloyd Cushenberry is going to make his money, J.C. Latham, the first-round pick, top 10 pick at right tackle, they got to be better. They just have to. It was honestly, I know there was some good moments from Cam Ward last week, but it's almost hard to evaluate him at all if he's going to be under pressure this much. Their offensive line has to be significantly better to have a chance in this game, because this Rams D-line, they're coming to eat, man. Jared Verse, you've talked about him obviously as a Defensive Player of the Year candidate. He could win that. You have to pass protect against this team at some sort of adequate level, or they will eat you alive.
It makes me sad that we're talking about the Titans offensive line like this already, because how many times do we talk about young quarterbacks in this situation? They just don't have the offensive line. Like, they're just not ready. But I think that if any quarterback, or more so than most, I should say, are equipped to still stand in there, make plays under pressure, be clutch, like Cam is one of them. So I kind of go back to what I said about the Titans preseason. I don't think the Titans are going to win a lot of games this season, but I think they're going to win 1 or 2 that you were not expecting, that Cam just goes Superman for, and he just is unbelievable. So I think that is still in the cards. I don't see that happening against the Los Angeles Rams, especially with their defensive line. You highlighted their defensive line a little bit there. I'm just going to go to the offensive side of the football. I said this when we were talking on the grade release show with Puka Nacua. We need to legitimately have him in the conversation for the best wide receiver in the NFL. I mean, how could we not? He has yet another elite receiving grade, 92.5 this past week. He has had more single-game elite grades than he has had grades below 60 in his career. If he has another elite receiving year, which he is well on his way, that will make it 3 out of 3 in the 3 years that he has been in the NFL. He caught 10 of 11 targets for 130 yards, including that game-sealing catch going up against Jalen Petrie. And speaking of Jalen Petrie, this guy was unstoppable, Dalton, on a defense that contained Jalen Petrie, Derek Stingley, Kamari Lassiter, Kalen Bullock, C.J. Gardner-Johnson. All of those players played at least 92% or more of the defensive snaps. None of those guys were hurt. None of them were rotating in and out. These are the studs. This is one of the better and most talented secondaries in the NFL, and Puka Nacua had an elite receiving grade and was unstoppable against them. With all due respect, why would I think that the Titans could cover him any better? Honestly. And so when you combine how I think that the Rams are going to be able to score even more points this week than they were than they were able to score last week against the Texans, given it being a lighter defensive matchup, and the fact that this is one of the best young defensive lines in the NFL going up against one of the offensive lines that struggled the most last week, it makes it hard for me to think this game is going to be close, and I don't think that it is. I have the Rams winning this game 28-13. I just think the defensive line is going to be way too much for this Titans team, and I think the Rams offense is really going to be able to have a lot of success with Matthew Stafford back there and Puka Nacua, Devontae Adams, all those guys. So I got 28-13 as my score here in this one.
Yeah, I do think the Titans' offense is really is the biggest problem here in this game. I think the Rams, I could see the Rams struggling a little bit to run the ball on Tennessee. It's a tough front to run on the interior with Simmons and Sweat and Joseph Day in there. So I don't know that they'll have their best day running the ball, but I think you mentioned it. The ability between Stafford's ability to see defenses, Sean McVay's ability to just find ways to scheme Puka Nacua open, and then Nakua's toughness, especially over the middle of the field, it's a big difference. And I think we see a little more out of Devontae Adams this week as well. Have it a little lower, scoring 23-10 Rams. It's still on the road, and I'm not quite sure that they're going to have a ton of success running the football, but you're right. That defensive line is the biggest concern in this game. Once again, we're going to say that a lot with the Rams this year, but if Tennessee doesn't pass protect any better, this is going to be ugly. It's going to be hard for them to score points.
The 49ers traveling to New Orleans. The Saints giving the Arizona Cardinals a run for their money last week. A lot closer than a lot of people anticipated that game was going to be. Where are we starting here? You want to talk about the Saints? Or you want to talk about the Niners?
I'll talk about the Niners defense here, and I've criticized their run defense a lot since even the second half of last year, and it hasn't been great. Now the grading isn't that great from last week because their defensive line is still figuring it out. But when you look at what the Niners did in run defense against Seattle last week, and a Clint Kubiak offense that really wants to run the football, played a pretty solid game. Only 3.2 yards per carry allowed. Only missed 2 tackles in run defense. Didn't give up any explosive runs, and I think what you see for the 49ers is the second-level run defenders are pretty darn good. Obviously, that starts with Fred Warner, who's fantastic, but if you look at their 6 highest graded if you look at their 6 highest graded players in run defense last week, only one of them was a defensive lineman. So you've got guys, Fred Warner, Luke Gifford at linebacker. I thought D. Winters played a good game. Marcus Siegel, who's the starting, I believe he's starting at safety right now. It's either safety or nickel right now for them. You've just got guys at the second level who are making plays. They're making plays, they're making tackles, they're making open field tackles, and they're not allowing yards after contact. So the D-line is not great, but the second level guys are playing well and making up for it. And the Saints really need to find a way to run the football. Look, the passing game it wasn't explosive last week. They need to get Alvin Kamara, Kendre Miller, whoever on the ground going. They had the worst run blocking grade in the league last week. And this offensive line, other than the left guard spot with Trevor Penning, is mostly healthy. 4 of the 5 starters are healthy. But Kelvin Banks, Talisi Fuaga, Eric McCoy, Cesar Ruiz, they've got to block up front better. They can't have the worst run blocking grade in the league, or it's going to be a real problem. The 49ers D-line, I think, is still vulnerable. That's a work in progress with all those young kids. But Fred Warner and those guys alongside and behind him have done a really good job so far of limiting explosive runs. That's a big, big positive for this Niners defense.
To me, it just comes down to the Niners being able to run the ball the way that they need to. They had 119 rushing yards last week, and I think a lot of people might look at that and be like, oh, no, it's totally fine. They were 10th in the NFL in total rushing yards last week. But specifically McCaffrey, when you look at Christian McCaffrey, 22 rushes, just 69 yards, and a 3.1 yards per carry average, especially with George Kittle no longer there. Obviously, it's well documented the injuries that they have had at the wide receiver position, but specifically now not being able to rely on Kittle, not just as a receiver, but also as a run blocker. Like they really need to run the ball better. And that just goes into how much more I think involved Christian McCaffrey is going to be in the game plan as a rusher and a receiver. And so last week it was a struggle for them, and I think that Seattle was able to defend them really well, and as you would expect with two teams who know each other very, very well. But I looked at the Saints last week, and even though it wasn't good enough, right? They had the Trey Benson 52-yard run that was sort of a killer for them. If you take that Trey Benson run away, or even if you make the Trey Benson run 12 yards, so all right, well, he's getting the first down, but we're tackling him right after. The Saints were able to hold the Cardinals below the standard of what they would have wanted to rush the football. And so again, I was sort of pleasantly surprised by how aggressive and how fast I felt like the Saints defense, specifically their defensive line, or I should just say front seven, was playing last week against the Arizona Cardinals, who are a team that we know wants to run the ball against you. So I think the Niners are going to have to lean on that a little bit more out of necessity. And so to me, I think that could be a recipe for this game being a little bit closer than people think that it's going to be. I don't know how potent this Niners passing attack is going to be. I mean, they basically squeezed out everything that they could from Ricky Pearsall last week. And it's like, okay, well, who else are they throwing the ball to? Of course, they're like I said, they're going to get McCaffrey more involved. But, when George Kittle went down, it felt like, man, it was just like a one target player there for them with Ricky Pearsall. So I've got the Niners still winning this game, going on the road, winning this one in New Orleans. But I say 21-17. Like, I think this one's going to be closer than a lot of people might think that it should be.
Yeah, the injuries make this so hard to read on San Francisco's side, and it's why they need their defense to come out and play well. They played very well last week. They only gave up 13 points to Seattle. They played well. They got a big win, obviously, and Bosa made the play at the end. They need their defense to play well, because you mentioned George Kittle. Jawan Jennings might play. There's a chance he could play this week. You've got Ricky Pearsall. You've obviously got McCaffrey. And then, we haven't mentioned yet, we don't know if Brock Purdy's playing. Right? So we don't know yet, as of today's Wednesday, we don't know yet if it's going to be Brock Purdy or Mac Jones, although I don't think Mac Jones is the worst backup you could have. He played reasonably well for Jacksonville last year. I think I'm going to hedge it. I have it even closer than you do. I think Mac Jones, with this offense, and if their defense plays well, is actually still capable of beating New Orleans, but I think it's going to be ugly. I've got Niners 17 and Saints 16. I just think it comes down to, we might see a game where neither team makes hardly any explosive plays. And if the Niners defense can carry them through this one, then I think they'll feel really good about being 2-0 despite all the adversity.
Yeah, I see the over-under that we got via DraftKings, 42.5. I like under on that one.
I think if you have a hunch, if Purdy was playing, and even though he's hurt, that might make that a little more difficult. But if you have a hunch that Mac Jones is playing, you almost certainly take the under on that.
Yeah. I mean, even if Purdy's playing,
80% maybe.
Yeah, like
it wasn't great.
Even if I give the Niners another 3 points, like 24-17, I guess it just comes down to, do you think the Saints are going to score at all, really, in this game? That's really where the over/under lies. Because I think whether Purdy plays or not, I think it's going to be somewhere around 20 for the 49ers. I don't think that it's going to be that much higher, but it just kind of comes down to, do you think that the Saints offense is really going to be able to score with Spencer Rattler? I think they can. I think this one's going to be slightly under. I think that 42.5 number is a little bit high for how I think the game script is going to go, but I do still think the Niners are going to win this one. The Miami Dolphins hosting the New England Patriots. Dolphins, what a horrendous week one showing that they had. I mean, there's just no other way to put it. The Patriots, they lost against the Raiders, but I think they looked good in the first half. Drake May, was a tale of two halves for him for sure, and then Geno was able to just come up clutch. But who do you want to talk about here first? You want to talk about the Dolphins or the Patriots? I know we're going to dive in deep into both of these teams.
I'm going to go the Dolphins. I'm going to make 2 points here. One, the overall picture. The Dolphins are not going to win this game unless straight up they just put in a better effort. Because they're too talented. They have too many talented players to be the worst team in football, right? But they looked like the worst team in football last week. And I think a lot of it is they have to want it. Now, look, I think these next 3 weeks against all three of their divisional opponents, Patriots, Bills, and then the Jets, we're going to learn everything we need to know about the Dolphins. We're going to know by week 4 what the Dolphins look like this season. And if it looks anything like last week, then it's going to be a problem. They're going to have major organizational issues, and there might be a fire sale and trades and all that stuff. When on the field, the whole reason that Tua's their quarterback and he is in this offense and he's been good in this offense in the past is that he can throw it A, quickly, and B, down the middle of the field, okay? You look at the way that he threw the ball down the middle of the field between the numbers last week against Indianapolis, not characteristic and not very good. 35.1 passing grade between the numbers last week, Trevor, against the Colts. 8 of 12, 78 yards. That's only 6.5 per attempt. 2 interceptions, 1 big-time throw, but 3 turnover-worthy plays. If Tua can't throw over the middle of the field, then this offense basically gets nowhere. That's pretty much what we're looking at this point between the RPOs. And look, they fell behind. They didn't get to run the full depth of their offense. They abandoned the running game because they were down 20-0, but in a blink of an eye, right? Now, New England against Geno Smith last week, this is where they struggled. I think you do have to attack New England's linebackers, Robert Spillane, Christian Ellis. These guys, very, very good run defenders. They don't turn their hips and move in coverage very well, and you've had questions about the Patriots coverage unit coming out of last week. Anyway, Geno Smith played a great game. He threw it down the middle of the field well. Tua Tua needs to bounce back when it comes to throwing over the middle of the field. You mentioned that first interception that he threw over Tyreek Hill's head. That didn't used to happen. Those used to be money throws in Miami's offense that Tyreek Hill would score on. They've got to make those throws in this game. The Raiders established those types of throws, the RPOs, the slants, getting down the seams against New England last week. If Tua can do that this week, they can bounce back offensively. If he can't throw it down the middle of the field, they're going to get stagnant again like they did last week really quick.
You hate to make sweeping declarations about a team 2 weeks into the season. If the Dolphins lose this game, I think we start talking about big picture stuff for them. I think we start talking about wholesale changes. You mentioned which players are going to be available at the deadline. I don't know how much longer McDaniel makes it if they lose this week, because not only are the Patriots a beatable divisional opponent, you're at home. Their best coverage player is out. They struggle a lot in coverage. And right now, I think that what you said to open up this segment is truly how I would encapsulate everything. There's just no effort, focus, and discipline on this team. When you look at their pass rush specifically, this is a talented defensive line. They have Chop Robinson. They have Jalen Phillips. They have Bradley Chubb. They got rookies like Kenneth Grant, Jordan Phillips. Jordan, the kid from Maryland, Jordan Phillips, right?
Yes, Jordan Phillips. Yeah, there's multiple Jordan Phillips. And
I was going to say there's multiple Jordan Phillips in the NFL, and
yeah.
so I kind of freaked myself out there. You have a decent Zach Seiler, you have a good defensive line. Dalton, 48.2 pass rush grade as a team, dead last in the NFL in week 1. 17.6% pass rush win percentage as a team, dead last. Bradley Chubb after the game was talking about how guys are freelancing, that they weren't really staying to structure. I went back and I watched every pass rush snap that defense had. They're not even trying. They're not trying to get off blocks. They're just running into the offensive linemen. I mean, I watched Chop Robinson had a 0% pass rush win percentage. I watched all 14 of his pass rush reps. He's just running into guys. He's just going straight at their chest, hand up. All right, well, guess he's blocking me. And I don't necessarily mean that to call specifically anybody out, but I couldn't believe what I was watching. You've got Tua talking about, well, I can't wait to see who shows up on Tuesday, who really wants it. Tyreek Hill obviously not happy when he's on the bench. He hasn't been happy in Miami. It feels like in over a year. It just feels like the vibes are terrible right now in Miami. And the film somehow was worse than the score. And they got blown out by the Indianapolis Colts. And the film was somehow worse than the score was on offense and defense, on Tua's side of things and the defensive line side of things. The team has to play with a lot better effort. They have to play with a lot better focus and a lot better purpose, or they're not going to beat the Patriots this week, and they're not going to beat anybody this year. So I was floored at the film that I was watching about how it was just so non-difference making at all whatsoever. And that's honestly why I like the Patriots, especially if you can still get them getting points in this game, because I'm not gonna forget the talent. I'm not gonna bet on a team that looks like they already quit one game into the season. And again, I don't mean to just I feel like I'm being a little bit more accusatory on the players, but it's just everything in Miami. I don't know if they just don't believe in McDaniel. I don't know if they're just they didn't have a great summer, when it came to camp and preseason or whatever, and they just don't feel motivated. I don't know what it is, but whatever is going on in Miami, if they do not do a 180 flip from whatever was out there last week, they won't beat the Patriots and they won't beat anybody this year.
No, absolutely.
It's hard to analyze it more than that, to be honest with you.
The effort level has to be better, and what it is an extension of the second half of last season. Once they felt like they were out of the playoff picture last season, there were games. I think, again, I've said it before, I think back to the Thanksgiving night game in Green Bay. They didn't want to play football that night. And last week against Indianapolis, they looked like they didn't want to play football that day. So they have to want it. They have, at some point, it's gut check time. Again, I think these next 3 weeks tell us a lot about the Dolphins. They get New England, then they go to Buffalo, which is a house of horrors for them, and then they get the Jets in week 4. And if they come out of that 0-4 for any reason, then they're pretty much shot, and we're going to know why. And it's going to be because obviously the vibes are off and the effort level's low, and you have guys on your team. In these moments, I'm glad you mentioned that defensive line. In these moments, you need your best players to drag you out of stretches like this. And their best players played terribly last week. Those are the guys that are going to have to win them this game. But I'm with you. I'm taking New England. I've got New England in this game 20-17. I don't question New England's effort level. Are they not great yet? Yeah, they're not great yet. But at no point in that loss to the Raiders last week did I question their effort level. They come out and play solid defense, and Mike Vrabel has those guys coached up, ready to go. I think New England's going to win this game as well.
I agree. Final score that I have for this one, Patriots 25, Dolphins 23. That's what I got. I think that the Patriots, I think they're going to take him in this one just because I could not watch that film from Miami and with all good conscience take them in any game. So I got the Patriots winning this one. All right, we're talking about the Browns and the Ravens next. But for this one, we're going to start talking to Terron Armstead, who obviously is a very accomplished Pro Bowl type of offensive tackle who recently retired, and he's going to be joining us every single week, highlighting his favorite trench matchups of the week. For this one, it is this Browns and Ravens matchup. It's Myles Garrett versus Ronnie Stanley, who, man, Ronnie Stanley has some incredible numbers against a guy like Myles Garrett, but Terron Armstead has some experience against Myles Garrett. So I asked him all about what went into stopping Myles Garrett and how Ronnie Stanley has done against Garrett throughout his career. Take a look. All right, back with our guy, Terron Armstead. He highlighted a fantastic matchup with Penei Sewell and Micah Parsons last week, and boy, there were fireworks for that one. No disappointments on either side. It was a battle, and then the whole Green Bay defensive line, I think, was fantastic. I know we'll talk about Green Bay's defensive line again later this season, but this week you wanted to focus on the Baltimore Ravens and the Cleveland Browns, specifically Myles Garrett going up against Ronnie Stanley. Myles Garrett has been phenomenal. I know you know this. You've gone up against him a couple of times, certainly when you were in Miami. So you know what it's like to line up with him, to look him in his eyes, and it's that chess match before the ball is even snapped, and then you go to war once the ball is snapped. How do you even begin trying to neutralize a player like that? This has been a defensive caliber or a defensive player of the year caliber player for basically his entire career. He wins with power. He wins with speed. He wins with technique. So as an offensive tackle, when you go into that week of prep against Myles Garrett, how do you really start to do that? What do you try to take away first with him to start that game plan of handling a guy like that?
Yeah, absolutely, Trevor. Myles he's an alien. He's one of the few people that's walked this earth that can do everything. Like his power is elite, his speed is elite, his get off, his bend, his awareness is elite. So he has so many bases covered. Myles is one of those guys that he's one of my 13 reasons why I walked away from the game. Gladly. So in preparation for a guy like that, you want to play to your strengths. You don't want to start to chase all his strengths and chase what he does really well. So you want to play to your strengths. So if you're a guy that like aggressive sets and you want to get on guys quick, you do that. If you're a guy that like the vertical set and wait and stop power, you do that. But you want to understand his top two. Like we spoke last week with Micah Parsons and Penei Sewell. You want to take away his top two. So for Myles, his get off is number one. He's going to consistently get off the ball first. Out of all his D linemen, he's going to consistently get off the ball first. So you have to, during that week of preparation, every time you're going through the cadence with your quarterback, you're flying off the ball. If you're late one time, that's a hit. So that's number one. And number two, power. You have to set and be in a spot with a great base, with great hand timing, so you can stop his power. Myles, if you cannot stop him from bullying you back to the quarterback, he's not going to another move. There's no reason to, which is very smart on his part. You have to make him go to his jab rip moves or his inside club. Or you have to make him go to move number 3, 4. If he can go speed to power and bull you into the quarterback all game, he's not doing another move. So that's how you would have to start that approach for Myles Garrett.
I love how you talked about staying true to your strengths, because I even the way that I set up that question for you, it's like, man, how do you even handle a player like that? And you're coming from the offensive tackle's perspective and like, hey, you got to stay true to who you are. Like you have to be true to who you are as an offensive tackle, because if you're not doing what you do best, you probably have no chance against his best. So I love that perspective. That's obviously fantastic stuff that comes from a lot of experience. Take me back to a couple of those battles, right? Take me back to maybe the Monday morning when you're getting into the film room, whether it was 2022 when I know you faced him for the first time when you were with the Dolphins, and then I know you faced him a little bit in that 2024 season as well. what does that total week of preparation look like? And then take me into the game a little bit. Give me the perspective of what it was like when you actually lined up against him.
Trevor, I'll actually take you back further than that. I'll take you to 2018. 2018, New Orleans Saints versus Cleveland Browns. Young T. Stead versus Myles Garrett. I would even go on record to say this is a top 3 one-on-one O-line D-line battle in NFL history. Like it really was. It was a clash. It was a master class from both of. I was at the top of my game. That was my All-Pro season. He's at the top of his game as well. He's been at the top of his game his whole career. But 2018, Trevor, if you get a chance, and all you fans here listening to PFF and PFF T-Stead and Trev, listen. 2018, Myles Garrett versus Terron Armstead. It was a master class. And in that game, I wanted to get on him early. I wanted to take away, like neutralize his get off and stop him from gaining momentum and generating power into me. So the entire game, like soon as the ball snapped, soon as Drew said, "Hut," I was gone. I was gone. And the Saints, they left me one-on-one the entire game, and we battled. Like it was a real heavyweight bout. And I'm telling you, one of the best one-on-one matchups that you see.
Man, now I'm going to the tape the second that we get done with this recording. I'm going to watch every single rep because the best defensive, offensive line battles are some of the most fun that you could have, especially looking after the fact, right? When people are watching the game live, it's very natural. You're looking at the ball a lot, and sometimes you're focusing on the trenches, obviously, for the impactful plays, but I'm going to go back and watch every snap. Everybody out there who has the ability to do it, I think you guys should as well. Let's go to Ronnie Stanley's part of everything, because as we were doing a little bit of show prep before we hit record, I'm talking about how Ronnie Stanley has 154 pass blocking reps against Myles Garrett. He's only given up 1 sack, 14 pressures, just a 13% pass rush win percentage for Myles Garrett when he has gone up against Ronnie Stanley. For Myles Garrett's standards, and you talked about him being at the top of his game his whole career, he has been consistently above 20% when it comes to that pass rush win percentage. So for Ronnie Stanley to hold him to 13% when they've gone up against each other, that's a pretty good number. And when we were kind of talking about those notes there, you said, well, hold on, Ronnie Stanley's like that. You got to give him his respect. And that's obviously what we're trying to do here on this show, highlighting this matchup. So talk to me about Ronnie Stanley and how good he is as an offensive tackle.
Listen, Ronnie Stanley is one of them ones. He is. Ronnie has been exceptional, beyond exceptional his entire career. He's been an All-Pro. He's been the highest paid O-lineman ever. You know what I mean? And he's earned those accolades, and is not for no reason that he's been able to hold Myles Garrett less than his average win rate. And Ronnie Stanley is coming off a week 1 performance where 0 pressures allowed, and 87 PFF grade, second highest tackle already to start the season. So yeah, locked in, he's ready to roll. They have a lot of history, they have a lot of experience against each other. So those guys know what they want to do and how they want to attack their opponent. Ronnie Stanley is one of them ones that can stand in there and go toe-to-toe with Myles Garrett.
Man, I can't wait for this one, too. I mean, it's Cleveland Browns, it's the Baltimore Ravens. Both these teams 0-1 on the season. You know they're going to be gunning for a win. Nobody wants to start 0-2. Terron, I appreciate it as always, man. I'm looking forward to this matchup. Looking forward to talking to you all season.
Yes, sir. Appreciate you.
Fantastic stuff there from our guy, Terron Armstead, talking about his matchups with Myles Garrett. And Dalton, I did, in fact, go back and watch that entire 2018 matchup with him and Garrett, and he was doing exactly what he said. I mean, the first couple of quarters, he was getting off the ball incredibly quick. He was quick setting him. He was jump setting him. He was making sure that he was not letting Myles get any sort of runway to start that speed to power. You could tell that he was winning that matchup against Myles Garrett so much and so often, so consistently, that to start the third quarter, the Browns just started stunting a ton to try to confuse him. And honestly, the only pressure that Terron gave up that entire game was in a stunt format where Myles was crashing down and he kind of just let him through the inside shoulder a little bit. No sacks, but he did let up that pressure. But man, that was a ton of fun to watch. So that's sort of what Terron was previewing here with this matchup. What do you want to talk about with Browns-Ravens?
No, and you love to see matchups like that with two guys and even two units at the peak of their powers, right? That Saints 2018 offensive line as a unit might have been the best in the league. And I'll tell you what, this Ravens current one in 2025, they were one of the best units in the league, obviously with studs like Ronnie Stanley and the center, Tyler Linderbaum, in there. And last week, they were the 4th highest graded offensive line in the league. But of course, Garrett and that Browns defensive line has got a counterpunch. They were the 6th highest graded defensive line in the league last week. Obviously, they always give Cincinnati trouble, but this Browns defensive line and really this whole front seven is the reason they stay in football games despite having a subpar offense. So I think when you look at that matchup, and going back to last year's matchup, remember the first matchup in Cleveland when the Ravens lost to the Browns, that was the Ravens offensive line, their lowest graded game of the season. The Browns have beaten the Ravens at least once in each of the last 4 years, so this is exactly what gives Cleveland a chance to win in this game. Stop the run, hold Derrick Henry to a reasonable number. Last year in that first game, it was under 90 yards. We talk about that being the big cutoff last year, that they were 11-0 last year when he ran for at least 90 yards. And of course, he runs for 180 this year, and they lose in week 1 because that's how that works with all my stats. But I think that's the idea, is that the Browns, we already know, if they're going to win this game somehow, some way, it's going to start with that D-line, with that front seven in the trenches. You have to make life difficult on Lamar and Henry first in the run game, and then work from there. Make Lamar Jackson beat you with his arm. If he doesn't, if he does that, if he beats you with his arm anyway, you were destined to lose that day, because there's some days with Lamar Jackson it was like that. But this Browns defensive line gives every team across from him trouble. Myles Garrett, Mason Graham on the inside. I got to tell you what, I think an emerging star on the other side. You talk about big, powerful defensive ends. I really like Isaiah McGuire, man. I think he's become an ideal partner there. I think he had an 88 PFF grade last week against the Bengals. He's big, he's powerful, he's nasty in the run game, he's getting better as a pass rusher. I think Isaiah McGuire on the other side, across from Roger Rosengarten, is going to be a really fun matchup too.
Man, I would love to see another week of the Browns passing offense as successful as it was against the Bengals, because I think that was a lot of fun. But the fact of the matter is, I don't really think that Joe Flacco is going to be dropping back and attempting 45 passes every single week, because he had 45 pass attempts, 31 completions, almost 300 passing yards. He had 290 passing yards. And it was very diverse, the pass catchers he was throwing to, with Jerry Jeudy, Dylan Sampson, Harold Fannin, Charles Tillman, David Njoku. All of those players had above 37 receiving yards in that game. I just don't think that we can expect that every single week from the Browns offense. Instead, I think they're going to have to lean on the run game a little bit more. And that's where I get worried about this team, because 49 total rushing yards last week. That was 30th in the NFL. Dylan Sampson and Jerome Ford below 2.4 yards per carry average between their top two backs there when it comes to guys who were getting the most carries. Quinshon Judkins, technically on the week 2 depth chart, but he was RB4 on the depth chart, so it seems like they still don't really know what to do with him. He might be going through the NFL's disciplinary process. Obviously, he wasn't practicing with them, going through the contract dispute and everything, so they're still ramping him up anyways. So even though he's on the active roster, he might not be active on game day. Even if he is, how much work is he getting? So it's not like I could sit here and say, like, oh, kind of, the cavalry's coming with Quinshon Judkins. I don't know if that's going to happen this week. So as I think about what was a great week last week for the Browns passing the football, if I take away from that a little bit, if I don't think that it's going to be quite that sort of offensive output, I've got to try to get something more out of the run game. And it was just really tough for me to see that. The offensive line wasn't playing great for the Cleveland Browns either. It gets tougher against an aggressive Baltimore Ravens defensive line. Ultimately, I do have the Ravens winning this game pretty comfortably. 31-17 is the score that I have. What do you got, Dalton?
I've got it 30-14 Baltimore. I think, just like you said, Flacco played a pretty good game last week. He put him in position to win, and yet on Cincinnati's defense, they still only scored 16 points. The offensive tackle situation is not good right now. They had a tough game last week. And look, this Ravens secondary, and actually I should say the whole team, they're going to be out for vengeance. I mean, they should not have lost that game to Buffalo last week. They blew a 15-point lead with 4 minutes left. They're going home. Right. It's a very tough place to play. I just don't think the Browns can put up enough points to win this game. Ravens 30, Browns 14.
The Broncos going to Indianapolis to take on the Colts here, that are flying high after a big victory over the Miami Dolphins. I would ask where you want to start with this one, but you're going to talk about the Colts. So go ahead and talk about the Colts.
Well, of course. I mean, this Colts offense, they're coming off the perfect game, Trevor. Coming off the perfect game.
Nobody's calling it the perfect game. You're the only one calling it the perfect game. It
was the perfect game. Put it in the record books. It was the most perfect game of the last 25 years. That stat was thrown out there. But either way, look, I think you've got a ton of intrigue on this. Just first of all, okay, can the Colts keep the momentum going? That's fun. Second of all, the Colts were the highest graded offensive line in the league last week against that Miami defensive line that we said struggled. And Denver pressured Cam Ward at almost a 53% rate. So you've got a fun trench matchup with Quentin Nelson in the Colts offensive line and Nick Benito in the Broncos defensive line. But I got to tell you, we got to talk about the rookie tight end, Trevor. Tyler Warren. You can clearly, first of all, the talent is off the charts. Last week, 90.4 PFF grade, highest among qualified tight ends in the NFL. Looked great as a receiver, looked great as a run blocker, led the team in targets, 9 targets, led the team in receptions, second on the team in yards, just behind Michael Pittman, 2 contested catches, 1 missed tackle, and you just saw every single way that Shane Steichen wants to utilize him, the same way that Penn State did last year, in his last year of college. RPOs, screens, play action, boots underneath, work him vertically a little bit. He can get to contested catches over the middle of the field. We have seen through the preseason and week 1 already every single way that Shane Steichen is creating to use Tyler Warren in multiple different ways, and it's a great matchup. I don't know if Dre Greenlaw is going to be healthy over the middle for the Broncos at linebacker. Justin Stranad played a good game last week, but the Titans aren't really equipped, A, with pass protection, and B, a tight end that can really hurt you like this. Tyler Warren's got a big matchup here, but Denver, they led the league in coverage grade against tight ends last year, whereas 85.6 coverage grade on targets to tight ends last season, best in the NFL. So Tyler Warren against the middle of this Broncos defense, the linebackers, if it's Justin Stranad, Alex Singleton, if it's Talanoa Hufanga at safety, if he sees some Brandon Jones, I think him flying all over the field is going to be a big factor of how Denver contain him, and can they not let him just, operate every last thing that Shane Steichen wants to do in his offense? He's already a core piece of this team.
I mean, the fact of the matter is, if Bo Nix plays the way that he did last week, the Broncos will lose. 4 turnover-worthy plays, 0 big-time throws, 38.2 passing grade. I mean, if he plays like that again, they will lose to Indianapolis. There's no question about it. But sort of an X factor in this game, and I don't know if it really helps with which way I'm leaning in this game, but it's something to note. The Colts versus the Dolphins last week, on 25 of the Colts' total 33 dropbacks, there was 0 pressure recorded. I mean, Daniel Jones was just sitting back there. I mean, not that Daniel Jones didn't have a fine day, he did. But there were even some reps where I'm like, okay, you got all day to throw, and you're still kind of taking forever to find out where exactly the ball should go, but there was no reason to put the ball in harm's way because he didn't have to, because he wasn't getting pressured at all. Now he is going up against a defensive line that is largely similar to what it was last year, and they had 392 total pressures, which was the most in the NFL. It's not going to be that easy for the Colts again. I think that that's the reason why I think this one's close. I don't think Bo Nix is going to be as catastrophic and as risky as he was against the Tennessee Titans. We talked about this on Monday's show. I think that he was sort of opening it up in that way because the Broncos were essentially treating the Tennessee Titans as an extension of the preseason. That's honestly how it felt to me. And I don't say that to be like disrespectful for the Titans. That's how it felt like the Broncos were playing, because Bo was attempting all of these crazy passes that we haven't seen him attempt in 3 years, going back to the last 2 years at Oregon. And I went on a little rant and I explained why that was sort of expected. I was not surprised on that. I thought that we would see this year because I think that him and Sean Payton got together and Sean Payton said to him, you have to throw the ball in order for us to get to the AFC Championship game. In order for us to win the division and get to the AFC Championship game, you have to throw the football. You have to take more risks, and we have to figure out where the line is with you being a little bit more explosive and having more big-time throws. Now, of course, he used PFF terminology. It's a direct quote from him. Just kidding. Everybody calm down. So in this game, if he's as reckless as he was last week, if he doesn't have closer to what should be a balance, I think the Colts win. But ultimately, I'm a big fan of the Broncos this year. I had the Broncos winning this game. Very close, because I think it's a complete coin flip and can go either way. 21-20. It's about as coward of a score as I could possibly give you. And to be honest with you, I'm just excited to watch this game, because I cannot judge either of these teams fairly based off of their week 1 opponents. The Dolphins and the Titans were basically the two worst teams in the NFL. So it's hard for me to take anything away from the teams that beat them because of how easy it was for them to do that. So this is really just, to me, this is week one for both of these teams. Like, this is the real test for both of these teams, and I'm just excited to see how it plays out.
I'll say this. They did have two of the easier assignments in the league, but the Colts at least made it look easy, and they didn't go out there and commit a bunch of self-inflicted wounds. I think that was the weirdest part of watching last week's Denver game on offense, is that, to me, the best thing that this team did last year in their run of the postseason, they didn't beat themselves. It almost felt like last week they were trying to beat themselves just to stretch the limits of how much they could do it. I don't love that. I don't love that, and I like the team right now that right in this moment knows their offensive identity. They know that Shane Steichen knows what he wants to do on offense. He knows what he wants Daniel Jones to do, the offensive line to do, Tyler Warren, the receivers, Jonathan, to everybody. He knows exactly what he wants to be on offense. Now, this Denver defensive line is a challenge. They got a really good pass rush, but if Daniel Jones just doesn't turn the ball over and he plays the same relatively safe brand of football, occasionally stretching it, but relatively safe, if he does that this week against this Denver defense, I think the Colts are going to take the win at home. I've got them 20-17. I think their offensive identity is very clear. You might not love the ceiling on Daniel Jones. Obviously, he was very solid last week, and all these weapons he's got to work with. I also think there was some cracks in Denver's run defense last week. It wasn't great. It's got to look better for Denver on offense. I didn't love it. I know they won the game, but I just think it's you can't be that reckless. And then you have Lou Anarumo changing all the looks and throwing you every 100 different things on this defense as well. And I thought they did a good job of that last week against Tua and Miami. I'm taking the Colts at home.
Yeah, I mean, if it's anywhere close to as reckless as it was last week for them, I think that the Colts win it. But I do think that it's going to be a little bit more controlled and a little bit closer to what we saw last year with the Broncos, which was a damn good football team that was able to win because of their defense. So I think both of these teams are going to be seeing improved defenses than certainly what they saw in week one. So it's going to make for an interesting matchup. Before we get to our next game, parenting. It's filled with high-pressure decisions. It can be difficult to tell if we've made the right choice for our kids' future, but there is a simple way that you can make a decision today that'll help make an impact on your kids' future in a positive way. Opening up a UGMA Kids Investment Account from Fabric to start their investment journey early and give them a financial head start. Fabric by Gerber Life was designed by parents for parents to make it easy to plan for and manage your family's financial path. With the Kids Investment Account from Fabric, you can start investing in your child's future today. While your kids can't invest while they are minors, this UGMA account allows you to invest on their behalf and gives their investments so much more time to grow. The whole thing is online. Setting up an account could take you as little as just 5 minutes. Getting started is just $1 a day. Then you manage your child's account and monitor those investments right from your phone. There's no contribution limits to it. It's got multiple tax advantages. It's SIPC insured up to $500,000, plus there's no commission fees to it. Just a low, flat monthly maintenance fee. You guys can join the thousands of parents who trust Fabric to help protect their family. Start investing in your child's future today at meetfabric.com/PFFNFL. That's meetfabric.com/PFFNFL, MEET fabric.com/PFFNFL. The portfolios are managed by Fort Washington Investment Advisors Incorporated. Additional services provided by Apex Clearing Corporation. All investing is subject to risk. You can learn more at meetfabric.com. The Carolina Panthers traveling to Arizona to take on the Arizona Cardinals. Which team piques your interest the most? You want to talk about the Panthers or the Cardinals here, Dalton?
I'll tell you what. I know they were playing the Saints last week, and the Saints, obviously, with their quarterback situation, we expect to struggle throwing the football. But this Cardinals secondary, I think, keeps getting better and better. 2 years ago, this was the lowest-graded defense in the NFL. Last year, I thought this secondary got better, especially at preventing explosive plays. And now you look at what they did last week against New Orleans. Only gave up 13 points, and a big reason for that was their secondary. The immersion of Will Johnson, who was their highest-graded player last week. Adrian Taylor-Demerson, Budda Baker, Jalen Thompson, Garrett Williams, Max Melton, if he can play even better than he is right now. You've got a secondary that I think, you always talk about your secondary is as good as your weakest link. The Cardinals don't have many weak links in this secondary. Last week, an 87 coverage grade, best in the NFL, and they only allowed 2 explosive passes all day. The deep ball was not there. And look, the Saints, they may not have a great quarterback situation, but they have weapons. They've got Chris Olave. They've got Rashid Shaheed. They've got Juwan Johnson. Alvin Kamara is one of the best pass-catching backs in the league still, and they shut it down in the passing game. I think this Cardinals secondary and their ability to shut down explosive plays is going to play big again against Bryce Young and this Carolina team that, look, Bryce Young over his last 9-10 games, we've known that he wants to throw the football downfield. Terron Armstead, a downfield receiver. Xavier Legette, a downfield receiver, and they're running a little shorthanded beyond those guys. So the Panthers have to hit these big plays. The Jaguars did a nice job against Carolina playing zone coverage and keeping things in front of them. I think the Cardinals have the opportunity to do similar things against this Panther offense. Keep it in front of you. Don't let Bryce Young make those big-time throws. McMillan and Legette are going to have to be better, especially on intermediate and underneath routes for the Panthers in this game for them to win it, because I think the Cardinals could have an advantage in a secondary that I think is ascending up the ranks.
Yeah, I mean, it has to be a big Xavier Legette game. It has to be a better game offensively for the Carolina Panthers, or they're just not going to win this one. Something that I'm looking at is Kyler's time to throw against the Saints, 3.19. It was the fourth highest of any quarterback last week. And so I just felt as though his process could have been a little bit quicker throughout the entire day. But along with that stat, the Panthers still could not get after the quarterback against Jacksonville. They're still having that issue that was lingering from last year. And it's a little disappointing at how ineffective their pass rush was. And yet Nick Scorton plays, I think it was 27% of the defensive snaps. Princely Umanmielen played 12% of the defensive snaps. You brought those guys in to give you a spark, and they just really didn't get the playing time. And I feel like if they were really lighting the world on fire when it came to the preseason and in practice, they'd be giving them a little bit more of a chance to do that. So maybe we see a little bit more of them this week, but it was still disappointing. For as much as I think a lot of people talked about the offensive side of things for Carolina, because I do think that was the more disappointing side of the ball, they still weren't able to get after the passer. And where the Cardinals, I talked about this during the review show, I would like more from them when it comes to like an impact run blocking perspective. They are a decent pass blocking team. Like, they held up pretty well against the New Orleans Saints, and I think they can do the same against Carolina if they don't step it up on the defensive side. So I got a little bit worried about Kyler not having a quicker process, but to be honest with you, if you're not going to pressure him, who cares if he holds onto the ball for more than 3 seconds? He's somebody who can make plays outside the pocket. He's somebody who is great at fire drills when plays break down and all that. And so if you're not pressuring him and you're not putting that pressure on him, then it does not matter if his process isn't quick enough, because you're just allowing him to scan the field for a lot longer. So yes, I think that first and foremost, Carolina's offense has to be better. It has to be quicker. It has to be more decisive. It has to be more confident. Xavier Legette's got to play better. Like, all of those things are certainly true. But they also have to get after Kyler a little bit better in this game. And we just didn't see that from them last week. So in this one, I still have the Cardinals winning. The Panthers are sort of at this point in time, until the offense looks more confident and until I think the pass rush is going to get better for them, I'm going to have a hard time picking the Panthers. Not that I think that they're going to get blown out every single week. I'm just going to have a hard time picking them, especially when it's teams that I think have the capabilities of putting on a pretty good day. So I got the Arizona Cardinals winning this one 28-17, and we'll see which version of Carolina we get this week.
Yeah, and I think the big thing, one of the big things, you mentioned the pass rush, but other than Bryce Young and his performance and development, their defensive line is going to be the biggest determinant of success this year. And another problem is Jacksonville ran for 200 yards on them last week. So if the Cardinals are able to get into both dimensions of their offense, able to run the ball well, able to get to their play action concepts, get the ball to Trey McBride, then I think they do have a good day. I think it's going to be, for the Panthers, another kind of maybe a slog on offense, with as much as the Cardinals prevent these explosive pass plays. I've got Cardinals 23, Panthers 16. I think the Cardinals can really control the pace of this game and allow Kyler Murray to not have to carry them. I don't think he was great last week against New Orleans, but I don't think he has to be great in order for them to win this game.
The Super Bowl rematch of the Philadelphia Eagles and the Kansas City Chiefs is this Sunday at 4:25 Eastern Time. Eagles coming off a big win, obviously, to start the season against the Dallas Cowboys, and the Chiefs coming off a loss to the Los Angeles Chargers. Both of these teams having a little bit of extra time, a little bit of extra rest for this one, with the Eagles playing on Thursday Night Football last week and the Chiefs playing on Friday. Now, the Chiefs were playing their game in Brazil, so the international travel, it's a little bit different, but they're also hosting this game in Arrowhead. What do we think about this one, Dalton? Where are we starting this conversation?
So I think when you talk about the Chiefs, and it's the thing everybody's talking about right now, is just they don't have, with Xavier Worthy, if he's going to be out for this game with the dislocated shoulder, they don't have any speed. They don't have any explosiveness, right? And here, first, I'm going to start with this. You want a fun stat that I found? Trevor, in their last 9 games, okay, dating back, including postseason, dating back to their last 9 games, Chiefs running backs have one run of 15 or more yards. One. So they're not explosive at all in the run.
They don't really have the backs for that.
Exactly.
Right?
They just don't
Isaiah
have.
Pacheco is not that guy.
Yeah.
Carson Steele is not that guy.
Kareem
Hunt's not that guy. Like Brashard Smith might be, but he's more of a wide receiver. Like they're not even drafting backs to be that,
So they lack speed in the backfield. Then without Xavier Worthy and Rashee Rice, they lack speed at receiver. You go back to the Super Bowl against this Philadelphia team, and the Eagles were better than anybody at preventing explosive plays. They had 0 explosive runs, and they had 3 explosive passes in the entire game, and they didn't have one until the game was 34-0 late in the third quarter. So then you look at, okay, last week against the Chargers, yeah, a little bit better, but it's basically just Patrick Mahomes doing whatever he can to will this team to win. 4 explosive passes. There was the busted coverage on the Travis Kelce touchdown. There was one great throw to Tyquan Thornton, obviously, and then 5 explosive runs, but 4 of them were Patrick Mahomes on scrambles. They only had 1 explosive run from the running backs. This is a problem against, because you saw last week with Philly's defense, Dak Prescott did a great job throwing the ball downfield because the Cowboys have those downfield threats. They have speed. They have vertical threats. They have CeeDee Lamb. They have George Pickens. Even guys like Jalen Tolbert and Kevontae Turpin, those guys have speed. The Chiefs, if Xavier Worthy doesn't play in this game, they don't have speed. And for as much as we want to talk about some veteran guys, Smith-Schuster, Hollywood, nobody's offense is designed to get Hollywood Brown 15 targets. It's just not how this is going to work. The Chiefs and their defense is going to have to play better for them to play this style of football. But you just look at the Chiefs and their personnel. If Worthy doesn't play and Travis Kelce's clearly slowed down, how in the world are they going to rip off chunk plays against this defense? And I know it wasn't their best day, and they're going to have Jalen Carter back after that incident last week. But I just don't. How long can they just beat teams with 1,000 paper cuts? Because they're getting even. It feels like it's getting even shorter and shorter when it comes to this team, where it's like every single play is 3 or 4 yards, and it's just a constant. And I get it. Staying on schedule, playing to the chains is great, but eventually you have to rip off chunks, or it just gets so hard to score.
Well, it'll be until week 7 when they trade for Tyreek Hill.
And,
right?
and get Rashee Rice back, and Xavier Worthy
right.
conveniently gets back and he's healthy.
Right.
Then I mean, yes, but until then, you got to win ball games. You're playing Philadelphia, and you're in clearly a very good division.
Until they trade for Tyreek Hill, which I'm convinced happens at this point. I think that if the Dolphins lose this week, you better believe Brett Veach is on the phone. He's like, "All right, what do we want? You're rebuilding. We need speed. What do you want for him?"
I mean, in the meantime, let's just say you're on the Rashee Rice timeline, okay? You're playing Philadelphia. You're at the Giants, which their defensive line at least is a problem. You get Baltimore, Jacksonville, Detroit. I mean, there's good teams you're playing the first 6 weeks, all with really good defenses. This is a problem. If they don't get explosive in a hurry, I mean, could we be talking about a 2-4 sort of start for the Chiefs because they can't score?
Could. I mean, we could be. What I'm looking at on the Eagles side of things, so the Chiefs didn't give up a 20-yard pass last week against the Chargers. But on the 4 pass attempts the Chargers had of more than 20 yards, 2 of them were open. Herbert missed 1, and I believe it was Keenan Allen who dropped 1 at the sideline.
Yep.
The other one was it was the Lad McConkey front of the pylon route that he should have completed. I'm sitting here at an office chair saying that he should have completed it, but it was a tough throw, but it's one that Herbert could make, and certainly the Chiefs didn't cover it well enough, so it's not the coverage that was the issue there. The Chiefs still had, even though they didn't give up a single catch of more than 20 yards, they still had a 47.9 coverage grade because guys were open. So attacking the Chiefs explosively deep down the field was an option for the Chargers, even though they didn't capitalize on it. They didn't need to. Obviously, they won the game. Will the Philadelphia Eagles do that? And for as much as I've talked about the lack of explosive passes with the Philadelphia Eagles, specifically last year, when they attempted those deep passes, they converted on them, I think, at the third highest clip of any team in the NFL. So they didn't do it a lot, but the percentage of when they attempted it, that they completed it, was very, very high. So if Kansas City presents another opportunity for them to attack deep down the field with Devontae Smith or A.J. Brown or whoever it's going to be, I could see Philadelphia having success against this Chiefs defense from what we saw from their secondary last week. Also, you pointed this stat out, which I want to make sure to read. 58.6 defensive grade for the Kansas City Chiefs in their last 4 games against the Philadelphia Eagles. I'm not breaking any news to anybody when I say that it's very difficult to defend this team, but whether it's short passes, medium passes, long passes, running the ball, explosive runs, tush pushes, whatever, the Chiefs struggle to handle the Eagles offense just like everybody else does. And so for that, even on the road, 31-23, I've got the Philadelphia Eagles winning this one. What do you got?
I've got a little more regression to the norm for the Chiefs defense, but I just don't know if they can score enough. I've got the Eagles 22 and the Chiefs 19. I think Hurts has to get in a little more of a rhythm in the passing game. He really won with his legs last week against Dallas, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. And look, if the Chiefs pass rush is going to look as bad as it did against LA, then they're just never going to get to him, and he'll have the ball back there for 3.5 seconds and eventually just take off running. You kind of worry about the Chiefs. You really do. In matchups, early season matchups like this, when you lack the ability to rip off chunk plays, especially against a defense like this, it's a real problem. I've got the Eagles by a field goal.
White Hat in the chat is saying streaming is long and exhausting, not as easy as it seems. Referencing me, criticizing Justin Herbert not being able to hit Ladd McConkey on the corner route. I appreciate that, White Hat. Thank you. I appreciate that. Still not going to compare myself to a quarterback in Justin Herbert, but I appreciate it. Thank you for looking out for us. The Falcons and the Vikings. The Vikings once again playing on primetime. This is the Sunday Night Football game this week. Vikings obviously coming off of a thrilling fourth quarter win in which J.J. McCarthy won Offensive Player of the Week. Not so sure I agree with that, but hey, respect to it. I'm not going to take it away from him. It was a hell of a fourth quarter from J.J. McCarthy. We won't worry about what happened in quarters 1 through 3. And the Falcons, they're coming off of a loss to the Buccaneers, but one that was very close, one that they got into field goal range. They had a chance to tie it and to go into overtime, but they just missed the field goal there. And so we know that this team is kind of right there. It's another game with those young rookies on the defensive side getting to play well. Dalton, what do you want to start talking about with this game?
Well, you said we're not going to worry about the first 3 quarters, but I'm going to talk about them. I'm going to split some things up here. And, watching back McCarthy's tape, I thought about something you mentioned to me on the grade release show about Cam Ward and the Tennessee Titans where, all I want to see from this guy, you mentioned about Ward, was in the fourth quarter when he's got a shot. Is he that guy? Does he have enough guts to at least give you a chance in those moments? It's kind of exactly what McCarthy did. His first 3 quarters, he had a 35.5 passing grade. Now, it's heavily dragged down by the pick 6 that he threw, and that was actually one of the lowest graded. It was actually the lowest graded throw of the entire week by any quarterback. It was the lowest on our -2 to +2 scale. If you're ever looking for a -2 throw from a quarterback, that was it. That was it right there. Just a house call out in the flat, just like that. That's a classic example of it. You're talking about 7 of 12, 56 yards, an interception, 3 sacks through the first 3 quarters, but he found it. And I think, with his team down 17-6, Kevin O'Connell told him, hey, man, let it rip. We're already down 2 scores. You might as well let it fly and see what happens. And you look at this fourth quarter, 90.3 passing grade, 6 of 8, 87 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 big-time throw on one of those touchdowns, and a rushing touchdown as well on the read option. You just saw a guy that just locked in and focused and did what he had to do to win a football game. So, are there a lot of things to clean up? Yeah. Did Dennis Allen throw a whole lot of different looks at him? He was a little uncomfortable against the blitz? Yeah, absolutely. Was the pick 6 awful? Yes, it was. But when it came down to it in that big moment, he came through for him, right? You have to give him that much, and it's going to take time for him to get in a full rhythm of this offense. We're not used to the Vikings offense getting off to slow starts, but that's what they did. The fact that in his first start, he did have the ability to punch back in a big moment like that, that means a lot to that football team. Obviously, you want to come out 1-0 in a big road division win, but to do it in that manner with him, yes, carrying them through the fourth quarter, that was big time, and we have to give him credit for that.
Yeah, look, for as much as we criticize the first three quarters from McCarthy because we have to. That's what we're supposed to do. It's a full game performance. At the end of the day, the confidence that you get from winning that football game, like that's tangible. Like just because you have to go back to the film room and after you celebrate and everything, you go back on Monday and you go, all right, let's take a look at the first three quarters and see what went wrong. It's a lot better to sit down in the film room and talk about the things that didn't go well after you won the game. I mean, you're still flying high. The confidence in which his teammates now have in him, that is translatable to the next week. So even though we obviously take into account his full performance, and again, probably wouldn't have given him offensive player of the week, that doesn't take anything away from the leap that this team might be able to make, even in the short term with him and the confidence that he has and how much better JJ McCarthy is going to get now in the next coming weeks, or we think that it's possible from him. So that confidence is so huge for him, regardless of what happened in those first three quarters. The confidence he gets to take is very, very important. The Vikings, obviously they win this football game, and it was a thrilling fourth quarter for them. But JJ is still, like every rookie quarterback, it's going to be up and down. And with that, you're going to have a more stable run game. Jordan Mason was able to get it going, I think, in that second half. But Aaron Jones, 8 carries, 23 yards, just a 2.9 yards per carry average. The Atlanta Falcons, they held, I would say, held the Buccaneers to 101 yards rushing. Now, it's obviously 100 yards. That's kind of a goal that every team has. But when you think about Bucky Irving and what he was able to do last year for this team, they really did, I think, bottled up the Buccaneers' rushing attack as a whole decently well. And so if they are able to do that once again to the Vikings, then, of course, you put more weight and more throws of importance on J.J. McCarthy's shoulders there. So I think that is a matchup that I'm really looking forward to on the Falcons side of things. Can they defend the run against the Vikings as well as they did for one of the better backs in the NFL in Bucky Irving? And then, man, I want to take the Falcons so bad in this game. I really do. And the reason why is because I was really impressed with what Michael Penix was able to do in week one against this Buccaneers defense, specifically with blitzing and pressure, right? When we talk about Brian Flores, that's what we talk about a lot. Double mug looks, pressure from everywhere, letting guys, maybe whether it's from the secondary, from the slot, from the linebacker level, green dog delayed blitzes, just straight up full house blitzes on you. Like they are trying to come up with pressure everywhere. And yet Michael Penix Jr. last week against the Buccaneers, when he was blitzed and that created a pressure, a 71.7 passing grade with 4 first downs against those types of situations. That was tied for the most in the NFL. I think Michael Penix Jr. is a baller. I think this dude's awesome, and I think that, sure, you can rattle him. There's no doubt. You can rattle any quarterback in the NFL, but he stands tall and has the arm talent to complete passes, quick passes, and even long passes under pressure. So I think this game could be a lot closer than people anticipate, but I'd be a hypocrite if I didn't continue to lean on the fact that coaches matter, and it's a reason why I like the Vikings so much to win this division and potentially represent the NFC in the Super Bowl. Ultimately, with the Vikings being at home, narrowly escaping that defeat against the Chicago Bears, and what I think that confidence will do to this coaching staff and the rest of this team, I'm going to take the Vikings 24-21 in this one on Sunday Night Football.
Both teams played games that went down to the wire last week. I think this game is going down to the wire this week. If the Falcons are going to win, they've got to take advantage of some injuries. Linebacker Blake Cashman is out for this game. Andrew Van Ginkel is in concussion protocol. Not sure if he's going to play. We don't know if Christian Darrisaw is going to play on the offensive side. We don't know if Harrison Smith, is the all-star safety, is going to play on the defensive side as well. They're going to have to run the football, and I know Bijan Robinson had a big day receiving last week, but they got to be better up front. If Van Ginkel's out especially, I think that works a lot in the Falcons' advantage. But I'm with you. I trust Brian Flores and the looks that he's going to throw at Penix. And a big thing for me, you want a big one? Justin Jefferson, 2 career games against Atlanta, 16 catches, 300 yards, 4 touchdowns. He is an absolute Falcon killer. They have no answer for him. And if Darisaw does play, the Falcons pass rush we still saw last week was not good enough against Tampa Bay. They didn't finish the job on Baker Mayfield when they had the chance. So I'm going to take Minnesota 24-20 also. I think it's going to be a razor-thin margin. This game's going to come down to a handful of plays at the end of it.
The Falcons getting points in this one, if they end up winning that game, this might be the bet that got away from me. But I got to stay true to what I've been talking about over the last couple of weeks as we've been previewing this season. Monday Night Football. Speaking of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, they are traveling to Houston to take on the Houston Texans here. Houston's coming off of a tough loss, close loss to the Los Angeles Rams. Tampa Bay Buccaneers coming off, like we said, that win against the Atlanta Falcons. Where are we starting here, Dalton? What do you want to talk about?
Look, I think it's gonna be a theme when it comes to both of these teams. Once again, pass protection, right? I mean, the Bucs. Look, they got just squeaking by last week against Atlanta with Graham Barton at left tackle, with Michael Jordan at left guard, with their usual left guard Ben Bredesen at center. They barely got by. This is a whole different animal now. You're talking about a Houston defensive front that dominated the Rams' offensive line, and you're talking about 2 superstar edge rushers in Will Anderson Jr. and Danielle Hunter. Last week against the Rams, look, they lost 14-9. You can't blame these 2 guys because they were great on the defensive side. Will Anderson, 89.5 pass rush grade, 4 pressures, 1 sack, 41.7% pass rush win rate in week 1 for Will Anderson. Danielle Hunter, 78.7 pass rush grade, 3 pressures, and a 30% pass rush win rate. This is a problem. This is a real problem. Baker Mayfield, he needs to get rid of the ball quickly. He had 4 turnover-worthy plays last week, got away with it, found a way to win, but this is a way better pass defense, I would say right now, especially on the defensive line with Houston than it is for Atlanta. Atlanta still struggles to rush the passer. This team has Anderson and Hunter along with a great secondary. The task only gets harder for Tampa Bay as they wait for Tristan Wirfs to come back.
Yeah, I think that a lot on this game rides on the Bucs defensive backs, to be honest with you. Their cornerbacks and then their safeties, because I think it might be a tough day at the office for their offense. Baker Mayfield had some crazy good throws this past week against the Falcons, don't get me wrong. But he also had those 4 turnover-worthy plays, and it was genuinely a tough game for Baker, especially in the early parts of it. You are now going up against a defensive line that has those 2 caliber edge rushers that you talked about. I mean, Baker Mayfield is going to get pressured as much or certainly more. It's one of the 2. It's not going to be less. It's going to be as much or more than he was pressured against the Falcons, and he had 4 turnover-worthy plays. So I got to think that if that continues again, he's probably going to pay for it a little bit more this week. I think that the Houston Texans offense is going to be a little bit better this week because I don't think the Bucs on their defensive line are as stout, and I should say as fast as that Rams defensive line is. And to be honest with you, Nico Collins, let's talk about the fact that was a close game between the Rams and the Texans. Nico Collins didn't do anything in that game. Now, of course, that was by design. You know, the Rams defense is keying on one of the best receivers in the NFL, but 5 targets, 3 catches, 25 yards. He had a 15.3 threat percentage, which, if you're new here, threat percentage is how often you are targeted per route that you are running down the field. 15.3%. That's the lowest single week threat percentage that he has had since week 3 of 2023. So you better believe they're going to look to dial things up more for him. They're going to try to, you want to say force him the ball more, just get him involved more in the game plan. I think this one's going to be close. Ultimately, the Falcons didn't make the Bucs makeshift offensive line, didn't make them pay for it. I think Houston does. I think Houston wins this game 27-24. I think it's going to be a game where both teams are scoring in the 20s. It's kind of a coin flip on, to me, how much the Bucs can get after Houston's offensive line. And then does Baker Mayfield throw the turnovers? Like, does he still have those turnover-worthy plays? Those are the key factors for me. Ultimately, though, with the Texans being at home, how ferocious their defense is, I'll say they barely get the win here, 27-24.
If this becomes a pass and stop the pass game, I'm with you, and Houston will probably win it. I want to say the most important player for the Bucs in this game is Bucky Irving. They, like you mentioned before,
Totally.
They got to run the ball better. Houston is vulnerable inside if you can run between the tackles. The Rams did a nice job of balancing their offense and working off that last week. If the Bucs can get Irving going between the tackles and get on these defensive tackles and these linebackers, I like it. And I don't really know with Vita Vea Isaiah in the middle of it especially, I don't really know how the Texans are going to run the ball in this game. They did a decent job of it with Nick Chubb last week, but if that's what we're banking on with the Texans run game and this offensive line, I don't love it. I like the advantage that Todd Bowles could have with some of his blitz packages, or even if he wants to sit back and rush forward and play in coverage, I get it. Look, the Texans, you got to remember, this team did not score a touchdown last week against the Rams, so I think you're talking about an offensive line that really it's sinking the whole operation. And yes, they need to get the ball downfield to Nico Collins. Yes, they need to get it to Jaden Higgins and Christian Kirk and Dalton Schultz and all these weapons, but it doesn't matter if you can't block people and you're constantly in 3rd and long. I'm going to take Tampa Bay to go on the road and get this win 23-16.
Love that. Love that.
I'm sure you do.
Hope you're right. I really do. It really, to me, it just comes down to, I have a lot of respect for the Rams' defensive line. And Houston's offensive line looked very bad last week. If they struggle in the same way against Tampa's defensive line, which I don't think is bad, like I want to be very clear, I don't think Tampa's defensive line is bad. I don't think they're as stout and as fast as the Rams' defensive line. But if Houston's offensive line still looks just as bad, if not worse, against Tampa's defensive line, well, okay, now we have our main takeaway for the Houston Texans moving forward through at least the first half of the season, I think. So that's obviously where everybody's going to go to first. The last week, it's a Monday night doubleheader, so this is the last game that we're previewing here. It's Chargers at Raiders. Both teams coming off a win. Both teams 1-0. Both teams looking to get to the top of that division there. Who are we talking about here, Dalton?
We're talking about Geno Smith, Trevor. And, I went back and watched the tape an additional time last night. And we've actually, I believe tomorrow, we're dropping a film breakdown of just how good Geno Smith was in that game against New England and how synced up he already is with his new offensive coordinator, Chip Kelly. And one thing I'm looking at in this game, Geno Smith last week against zone coverage, 89.9 passing grade, 15 of 18, 201 yards and a big-time throw. Just a spectacular game. The Raiders, they've got some unproven options out there at receiver, right? Jack Besh, Dante Thornton, Trey Tucker's really, he's a vertical threat out there. Jacoby Myers, obviously solid. Brock Bowers is one of the elite tight ends in football. But I think Geno's dominance over zone coverage comes into play in this game against a Jesse Minter-led defense who led the NFL in zone coverage rate last year. Geno's a veteran guy. He hasn't been starting for, 11 or 12 years, but he's been starting the last 3, and he's got a lot of experience behind him and just watching tape, looking at defenses. I'm telling you right now, his eyes are on it. He knows where Chip Kelly wants the football to go, whether it's his first read or getting beyond that. Geno Smith looked really good against New England, especially against their zone coverages last week. He's going to see more of it against the Chargers this week, and I expect him to play well. I think this is going to be a really fun football game once again. Like to see the Raiders have a little more balance. They didn't get enough out of Ashton Ginty in this game on the ground, but I think Geno could have another really good day.
Dalton, Pete Carroll is now the head coach of the Las Vegas Raiders. What kind of defense does Pete Carroll like to run?
Well, kind of that usual, that's that old Seattle cover 3. You already know.
Lot cover 3, lot cover 1, single high safeties. Can you guess which team in the NFL played the most single high safety snaps in week 1?
Oh, you already know it's the Las Vegas Raiders.
This is just
what we do. This is what we do.
Vegas Raiders. They played 30 coverage snaps with a single high safety. It was the most in the NFL. The Chargers were 9th in EPA per pass against one high safeties last week. They were 0 for 4 when it came to those passes, 20 yards or more down the field. I talked about a little bit about that when we were talking about the Chiefs game. But Herbert did have that big time throw, and a lot of those passes, I can't remember exactly how many. I think it was 3 out of 4. I think so. Were against single high coverages. And when you have a quarterback that has the arm talent that Justin Herbert does, and more receivers now to be able to throw the ball to, that is a coverage that you can often attack. Because why did the popularity of single high coverages go away? Well, I guess there's a lot of reasons. I don't mean to oversimplify it, but a main catalyst, after being such a staple of how you play defense for 10 years, really, it felt like, from 2005 to really like 2016, 2017, it felt like it just cover 3, single high. Like, that was how you play defense. You could have another player to be in the slot or in the box or everything. It gave you so much freedom. But then all these alien quarterbacks started coming out of nowhere. Josh Allen, Justin Herbert, Patrick Mahomes, Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson. Like, all of a sudden there's these guys with these howitzer arms. that are throwing the ball so fast with such great anticipation, and these receiver playmakers are getting faster and more vertical as well, just offenses in general, that all of a sudden you couldn't really just play with one single high safety back there because they would be able to find where the holes in coverage were. Pete Carroll staying true to it. And the Patriots were not able to take advantage of it last week, obviously, with the Raiders getting the win. I think Justin Herbert has that arm talent to be able to do so. And not just arm talent, because I think Drake's got a lot of arm talent too. Drake May, that is. But I think that Herbert's got now that anticipation. Like, I think that he has seen a lot. He's got more experience to him. And if the Raiders are going to continue to play that style of coverage, I think Justin Herbert now not only has the arm talent, but also the offensive weapons to make you pay. So, because of that, I'm taking the Chargers in this one, 24-17. Who do you got in this one?
I also have the Chargers 27-23. I think we could get a high-scoring game. I do expect both teams to play well. The Raiders' defense looked better last week than I thought. I just think that New England offense also is still very, very young, and the Chargers and Justin Herbert, man, he was in command. I think that's the big thing, the command of this offense, and he just knew where he wanted to go with his eyes. He knew when to take off and run when he needed to, especially the play at the very end there. I think Justin Herbert's so in command of this team right now. They're going to come out with a relatively high-scoring win. This is going to be a fun football game because I think the Raiders' offense and the way Geno Smith played on Sunday, very, very exciting stuff. I think the team that finds balance in this game is going to win. Whether it's and look, I didn't even think about it. We got the first-round running back matchup between Ashton Jeanty and Amarian Hampton. We'll see who wins that battle. And when you were talking about Pete Carroll and the Seattle 3 and all that, you almost forget. And it feels so long ago now. You're getting on to 10, 12 years ago now that used to have all those great battles between Jim Harbaugh and Greg Roman on one side in San Fran, Pete Carroll and the Legion of Boom on the other side. You almost get flashbacks to it. It's not quite as flashy yet as those matchups that we would get in NFC title games and things like that, but this is going to be a fun football game. I'm taking the Chargers on the road, but it's going to be really close.
Yeah, it better be a good game because I'm going to be up until like 1:30 watching the end of this one. So if we're
what else are you going to do? We got nothing else to do during this time of year.
You're not sleeping. I know that. You've told me before. You're not sleeping, so we might as well be watching games well past midnight on the East Coast. There we go. All 16 games previewed there for you guys. Appreciate everybody getting in the chat, watching the show live. If you don't have a PFF Plus subscription, now's a great time to get one. Get 25% off right now. PFF NFL Show 25. No spaces. That's the promo code to get yourself 25% off a PFF Plus sub. So go get one. Anybody out there who loves the content, who might be interested in sponsoring some of the things that we do here, the media that we have here at PFF, sales@pff.com. That's the way for you guys to get in touch with us. That's it for us this week. But of course, we're going to be back with you on Monday for the grades release and review show, reviewing every single game that we have from Thursday, and then the Sunday slate. We'll preview a little bit of those Monday Night Football matchups a little bit more as well. For Dalton Wasserman, I'm Trevor Sikkema saying thank you guys so much for watching the PFF NFL show. Enjoy the weekend. We'll see you guys on Monday.